Hello and welcome to a brand new Unsourced Wall Radio. We're talking about Kraven the Hunter, the last, maybe not last, or at least the final of this version of the Sonyverse, Venomverse, Sumsy, Spumsy, whatever you want to call it. And I'm joined again by my great friend Mikhail, who has been, long-time listeners probably know he's been here for ages. Yeah, he's been on all of my almost all of my roundtable discussions here, and so I'm excited to have you here. You're one of the biggest appreciators of the Venomverse, as you like to call it, with me. I think we're one of the big boosters on our timelines. Um, what did you think? Give us your initial brief thoughts before we get into it more in depth.
Oh, thanks, and thanks for having me. Yeah, I now like to call it the Venomverse branch of the Sony Spider-Man universe because, I kind of, really looked into things and it's like, oh, okay, so they're like basically like they have like these like three different like mainline I guess, universes in a way, but they're all part of this larger thing that they call the Spider-Man universe. And yeah, and I would say Kraven is, in my mind, the best of the Venomverse movies. It really is. I went into the theater with an open mind. The critics were trashing it, but they were trashing every single Venomverse movie largely for reasons that I believe are outside of the films themselves. And I really, really liked it. I mean, I actually kind of want to see it again. I think it's great. And, I remember reading a Ringer article recently that called the first Venom a deranged masterpiece. I think that might have been. I love Venom, but I think this is the
That's
movie
pretty
that
accurate.
deserves that.
I
Yeah.
will not have any Venom One slander here. It's a
Oh.
perfect film. But no, go
Oh,
ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, but anyway, yeah, but well, for me, this is the best Venomverse movie, and I'm hoping that uh, that this isn't the, like the final, like the final, like the last time that we see this story. I'm hoping that it will continue in some form because I really like the setups of it. I really appreciated how this film embraced the Russian origins of its main character. Um, and I just thought it was like a bold, stylish, confident take on things. It kind of reminded me of the first Aquaman film. For me, Aquaman is the one true masterpiece of the DCEU, and this is
Not
probably
Shazam 1.
no, no,
How dare you?
Aquaman. I'm sorry. It is Aquaman. It is the best. Better than Man of Steel.
Oh,
Better
no,
than
okay, okay.
Shazam.
We're going off a track
Yeah.
here with lies. Continue.
Right. But yeah, but for me, like, yeah, like I thought, yeah, I think like Craven is like the Aquaman of the Venomverse, kind of like Aquaman with like with a mix of, I don't know, John Wick, I guess. But yeah, so anyway, I really look forward to talking about it in depth.
No problem. And yeah, so am I. Now, I gotta say, when it's first announced, Kraven the Hunter, I feel like everyone kept at this point when this was announced. The Venomverse had already been in full swing. We got Venom 1, we had Venom 2. We kind of know what the gist of these things are, and yet people were like, well, how are they gonna do that? Like, and that's why I hate, because that's when, like, well, he's not a villain. Well, that's the thing. You know that he's not going to be one. Okay, like, that going in. You know what these movies are doing. You know what they're about. You're you're kind of you need to go and approach these films on the level that they're going to be at. Like, I feel like that's the thing. People are prejudging these based on what they believe they should be. And I'm not going to say necessarily with adaptations that that's always a wrong thing to do, but when you're like 5, 6 movies in, you got to read the room. And I feel like it gets tiring. It gets very, it's like beating a dead horse. I think more often than not, like, we get it. Yet you should have. These are complaints that would have made more sense in 2018. Okay, I'm sorry, the boat has left on those kind of things. So what are we can do now? And I feel like Craven, more than anything, it made the most sense in terms of how to play this. And because again, like he doesn't hunt animals. Like, yeah, but like, what's the most dangerous animal? Man. Okay, like it's a thing that you can port over pretty seamlessly, and yet people are like, well, he doesn't hunt animals. He wasn't really ever gonna to in this kind of thing. You have to go in expecting that. Okay, it's pretty much standard at this point for these films, and that's really got me tiresome about it. And I guess and you're right, because people will prejudge these films based on stuff that they should already be aware of or expecting, and you know, get a different tune. So, I wasn't too excited for this, but I was willing to give it a good chance. I think that Aaron Taylor Johnson is a good actor. I think that when they said it was going to be the first rated R one, that was a bold choice. And overall, the additional cast I think is really really strong. I think that Russell Crowe and what's his name, Fred Heckinger, yeah, Heckinger, was like when he got cast and when they announced who he was playing, I got really excited. It's not a spoiler or anything like that. They announced him as playing the chameleon, and I think I think like I loved him and stuff I've seen him in. I thought he was fantastic in the White Lotus, the first season. I thought he was really good in Pam and Tommy. I love him a bunch of stuff. I've seen him a bunch of stuff, and so like, oh, that guy is playing the chameleon. That's great. Chameleon's my favorite, Spider-Man villains. I thought that that would be a really fantastic choice. I was kind of getting really excited. Um, and when I went in, I watched it. I thought this is a really strong film. At least for what these films are. It's the lowest rated one or something, and I think that's ridiculous. Because it is the one that is the most complete story, the most complete narrative, the most complete in terms of actually being a film that you can watch. I love the Sonyverse films, but they are edited and hatcheted to death. I mean, I Let There Be Carnage is everyone's
Yes.
fan favorite, but it is barely a workable film, and I
Cut
love
cut to pieces,
cut
man.
to pieces,
Just cut to pieces.
shredded. And same thing with The Last Dance. I love The Last Dance. Last Dance made like a bundle. It was a smash box office hit globally. Um, but even that has a lot of patchworkiness to it. And yet Craven, which is a film that actually kind of like this is basically the most complete, directorial intent that any of these films has had.
For
It's the
sure.
lowest rated. I find that ridiculous. I really do, because it is maybe aside from the first Venom, which I really love. I think the first Venom is a masterpiece of 2000s filmmaking for comic movies. Like it is, like you could tell me that was from 2002, I'd believe you in a second. First Venom, 2002 movie, yes, definitely. Craven, it feels akin with that. It is a platonic ideal, okay, of an early 2000 comic movie. Okay, it has it all. Okay, it has. Let's just take a generic premise. Let's slap the character names on there. Let's go through a book of all the characters we have the rights to and see what sounds cheap, but we can make cool. Okay, that's and it works. It's a proven formula. They made comic movies like that for years and years, and no one really complained because you know what? It gave them room to maneuver. I feel like a lot of companies nowadays, they're all homogenous. They're all blustery. They all want to be something that like, oh, we can't be just a comic movie. We have to be a comic movie and this or a comic movie and that. And yet the Sonyverse films, Venom and Craven in particular, they embrace it wholeheartedly. They like, okay, we need to be a film, but we can't forget that we are also just this really silly comic property, and let's play it by ear. And you mentioned this. If you want to repeat what you said on my comment about it, but like you have to balance out. You have to leverage really both how you're going to make this presentable as like a movie that people are actually going to watch and be seated watching for like an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and like also comic silliness, because a lot of comic movies nowadays they don't know how to do that. That's when we get a lot of sludge on screen because like, oh, if we're just being silly and joking about everything, the visuals don't matter. And what I love about Sony films is that they're like more than anything, the visuals do matter. And Craven in particular, I think, has some really strong visuals. What do you think?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I think that I find that a lot of these Sony films are indeed prejudged. There are these, but I think they're judged often against what people expect of the modern comic book blockbuster, right? And uh, the standard for that, for better or for worse, has been set by the MCU. And I find that especially the MCU has set the expectation in terms of tone because, not every MCU movie does this, but I think for the most part, the MCU movies really do adhere to a kind of house style, and that includes a house tone. And the tone was primarily set by Joss Whedon. And if you know anything about Joss Whedon, it's that he really likes to take genre material, really goofy, really pulpy, silly stuff, and he tends to get really meta about it, very jokey about it. So it's kind of like you'll have, moments of, I think, genuine emotion and investment in this sort of pulpy material, but then it'll also be followed by moments of self disparagement, self mockery. So people will people within like the characters within the text, somebody will make a joke, somebody will point out how ridiculous this all is, somebody will make a pop culture reference that will completely deflate the moment, right? And that in turn, I think, tells the audience that, oh yeah, it's okay, you can laugh at this, we want you to laugh at this, we are we are totally admitting to how ridiculous it is, right? And the Sony movies, I find don't really do that. They tend to, they don't necessarily take themselves that seriously, but they embrace, the goofiness, the silliness in a way that, they don't mock themselves. They don't
Right.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
like
they let it be what it is.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, so there's like a fundamentally different attitude that these films have about themselves, right? So if you're an audience member who comes with the expectation that like, oh, that's, a comic book, a comic book based blockbuster, it's supposed to be doing this, it's supposed to be, like this is like, you see this and say, oh, this is the completely wrong approach, like, and they're taking it all way too seriously. It's way too somber. I mean, I literally read a critic who spent like just, the entire the entire article is just like complaining about what this movie doesn't do and how it's like the fundamentally like wrong take uh like on the subject matter. And I'm just like thinking, oh my god, really? And there are other people who are like, oh, this movie is unintentionally hilarious. And I see that and I'm just like, did you miss the jokes? I mean, there are
Exactly.
yeah,
And
like
because that's the thing, yeah, because you're right. You're definitely right. Like the thing that when you mention, and you've said this already in a way, when you say that like the MCU movies after like Josh Whedon onward, they're like, okay, it's okay to laugh at this because it's cheap, it's disposable. Like that is people say like, oh, Sony is like the worst offender of making people not respect comic movies, but like the MC movies don't really respect themselves either. I mean, as you're watching, in fact, they're a lot more detrimental than I think anything Sony could really do. Because at the very least, Sony is like they're just presenting it to you. Okay, like this is what it is, and if you find that funny, then okay, like it's and yes, there are lots of jokes, but also if you find it humorous, then it's okay to laugh. Like you're not watching a drama here. It's okay to laugh when when like Kraven starts like scaling a high-rise building. It's okay to laugh. There were chuckles in my theater. I didn't mind it. I was chuckling too because it's a funny image, but I think it's pulled off really well. It's a good striking image. It's fun stuff. You're having fun. It's not, but it's almost like, oh, that looks a little bit weird. You see like an animal and as a joke or something like that. That would be really lame. And you're right. A lot of MCU stuff has that kind of stuff, and you don't really see it in the Sonyverse films. And I'm glad because it would take me out of it. It really would.
I mean, yeah, I will say that I do think that, I remember watching the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films like 20 years ago, 20 some years ago, and I remember distinctly being put off for some reason by how those movies approached, their emotional scenes. Like I thought, oh, I don't know why, but this is like hard to watch. Why is it so sugary? Why is it so? And and looking back, and I'm just like thinking, oh my god, like I think those movies were so sincere. They were so playing up this stuff. And maybe that was, and for some reason, like I could not accept that. Something about that was putting me off. So I'm wondering if maybe that's just a thing sometimes with audiences nowadays. Like somehow we've been programmed to reject um, that approach in general. Like we've been conditioned to see the other thing as normal in a way. But looking back at that, I'm like, no, no, wait a minute. That was actually really good. I appreciate what those movies are doing because nowadays everything is just, tends to be kind of so meta and so kind of ashamed of itself.
Like, let's let people know we're in on the joke. Like, you're explaining the joke. It's
Yes.
really lame. It really is. And so that's what I like about Kraven. That's what I like about Madam Web. They're full face what they are, and that is a lot more entertaining. That's a lot more humorous than any joke could ever be. I
Yeah.
find that a lot more entertaining than like half the MCU. Like, okay, can we get back to the story? And then the story isn't even that good, and like the visuals aren't even that good. So what are we even getting here? Like what are we even getting here? But to bring it back to Craven, you know, I will say that, and this just get into the movie a little bit. I was given a tiny pause when the title screen first popped up, and it was an impact font. I'm like, oh boy, oh no, like that's the that's the bad foot to start off with, because like ooh, because I have to wonder because like this happened with Madam Web too. I think it happens all the Sonyverse films except for the Venom movies, um, where they all get like these really good logos. Morbius, Madam Web, Craven, they all have fantastic logos, but the films don't use them at all. And for Craven, I think it's because it would be a little bit too goofy, and I think it's the only concession that probably gives it.
Oh,
Um,
I never actually noticed that. I mean, yeah, yeah, like I'm looking at the poster right now and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I remember the
no,
title looking
the,
that cool
the
on the
the
screen.
the title was impact font, like meme font, like this Helvetica. Like, oh no, that's off on the wrong foot immediately. I thought it gave me a little pause, but in the movie gets off on really fun keel. Let's talk about the first 8 minutes. First 8 minutes that they released, okay, infamously, everyone started clowning on them. Oh man, they must be desperate. They're releasing the first 8 minutes, but honestly, I think that the first 8 minutes are a pretty good, strong setting point. I did find it funny because you made a
Yes.
point of this, where like you were saying that it was good that that the first 8 minutes weren't like a let's go back to the past prologue, right? I
Yes.
thought that was really fun because immediately after the title screen, we get that, and it's almost pitch perfectly the same prologue as Morbius. It's
Mm,
exactly the same, almost exactly the same as Morbius's prologue. Like, no, this is really funny. Um, but honestly, I did like that. I do like that. At least it began in a good place.
yes.
Like it's like a little side mission. I think that's if you're gonna set up Craven as like this big hunter, the movie doesn't really have enough time to really show him doing that kind of stuff. So it's a nice little prologue, nice little lead in, and it's. I think it went on a little too long. It was a little too long, much too long. But I think it had
I
really
don't
good
agree
energy.
with that.
Really?
Yeah, I actually would have appreciated an even slightly longer take on that because I really wanted to see the wolf scene,
Oh no,
like
no.
the full
I I
version of
I
the
mean I
wolf
don't mean
scene.
that, and that would have been really fun. But like it felt like this is set up like we're at like the gas station, and we're at like the check-in. He meets the roommate. He's in the yard. He meets
Okay,
the
yeah,
gang.
okay, but
That kind of you know let's see, preamble felt a little bit stretched out. I think we don't really need most of that, honestly.
you know what it reminded me of, really? It actually reminded me of Indiana Jones. Because you know how the Indiana Jones movies, they tend to open with this like extended vignette, which is like almost like the end of some episode or story arc or whatever that you never really see, but it's basically like, you get this climax that introduces the character like in like all of his glory, right? Like it might not even be connected to the main plot or whatever. but it serves as like its own self-contained little thing. And so I like how, yeah, like they take their time, okay, here's the setting. It's like, it's Russia. It's like you hear like all this music and everything. Mysterious man at the gas station, there's this like big, like scary looking neighbor. Yeah, I mean, right, like that little relationship that just forms right there, with his like with his fellow prisoner, right? And then
Mhm.
later on, like they cut back to him as the guy escapes, and it's like a full little character arc right there. And
Yeah.
he's like 3 days. Oh my god, he's like
Yeah.
really. So
Yeah, no, it's great. Again, like I don't. People was like, "Oh man, I left my theater, and everyone was full of somberness and dread." And like, I don't know, my theater was pretty good. Like people laughed. People laughed at that part. I heard some chuckles. It's not a laugh riot, but like they were like, "Oh man, I had a dead theater. Everyone was sad and depressed." Like maybe you're just living in a bad, really really lame neighborhood. I don't know.
My theater was mostly empty, and I think I might have been the only one, who was like laughing at all the places where I was supposed to laugh. Which
Really, that's disappointing.
it's sad, but I also felt like, okay, I get what they're going for. I would say the funniest scene is actually, I think maybe one of my favorite scenes in the movie is like when he's trying to get into the elevator, right? Like, and he throws the knife to stop it, and the
Yeah.
guy's like, "So, what do you do? Oh, I
Yeah,
hunt. Who
someone
do you?"
made a point like that's just totally lit from Spider-Man 2.
I, I forgot that, but I would say, that to me is a scene where, yes, you're supposed to. It is funny. It is a ridiculously funny scene. I hunt people. Okay, yeah,
Oh,
just
I pulled that guy up, one playing his roommate. You have to see, like, I'm wondering, like, because like they have Wednesday going on, they have to introduce Lurch, and like maybe he got cast as Lurch. It'd be really good. I think he'd be really great Lurch. He's got that look for a Lurch, and like, oh, he played the Frankenstein, the monster in Victor Frankenstein, the one with Daniel Radcliffe and James McAvoy. You remember that one? He played the monster.
no, no, actually, was that the one? Was that like I Frankenstein or
No, that
something?
was no, that I Frankenstein was the one with Aaron Eckhart.
Oh, okay. No, I don't think I've seen the one you're talking about then.
Really, it's
No.
pretty lame. But apparently I watched it and like it was lame. But apparently he played the monster, which is good. That's cool. Good guy. I can totally see that. I can totally see that.
He has a great presence, if anything. I,
Definitely.
I was I think his Russian was also a little gibberish for me, but
Oh my
it's
God. Let's talk about the accent work on here. Okay. Um, because okay, so I feel like they tried really hard to get around it by giving Kraven the backstory he has, where like he's transatlantic. Okay, he's lived in different countries, mostly United States, mostly Britain. That
Mhm.
they set it up. So I think they tried to mitigate Aaron Taylor Johnson's voice as much as they could, but the fact of the matter is, okay, Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's a built guy. He's tall. He's buff. He can clearly do the action stuff. The thing is, right, he still sounds like a really scrawny nerd from KX1. He still sounds like a little dweeb, and nothing can change that. Okay, it's insane. Like whenever he speaks, like this guy does not have the presence of a voice. Like I think his performance is pretty good. Like the way he acts, the way he handles himself, the way he talks. When he speaks, is like this is a 12-year-old talking. He's got like that this a very youthful voice. Okay.
I never really noticed that. Like it didn't that did not stand out to me. I'm just like, I speak Russian. I'm a native Russian speaker, and so every time Aaron Taylor Johnson tries to speak Russian, I'm just like, oh God, yeah, he's like, it's just I mean, parts of his dialogue are legible, but other parts are just like, he's just screwing up the words, man. It's sad, which is especially noticeable to me because some of these supporting cast members actually speak really good Russian. Like, the guy who plays like Chorny, like that I guess warden slash mafia boss and everything.
Yeah.
His
Yeah.
he has perfect Russian. The guards over there, they speak perfect Russian, like, authentic, like actual, text and pronunciation and cadence and everything. So just against that, it's just, but so I'm glad at a certain point they just drop his Russian dialogue, So so I'm of two minds. I'm happy that they embrace the fact that Kraven is a Russian, right? That they embrace that part of his character. I wish Aaron Taylor Johnson spoke better Russian, and I'm happy when he stops speaking it.
Oh no, 100%. And the thing is, like a lot of the voices in this took me out of it, like a lot. Like, I think you know what? It's crazy to me because Ariana DeBose, okay, who plays Calypso, she's I've seen her in a couple of things. She's talented, I think. I've seen her a couple of things. Like I was never taken out of her as a performance, you know. But as Calypso, like her line readings were very weird. It felt like she was speaking as part of a sitcom. You know what I mean? So, like one highlight was you are a lunatic. You know that she felt like she felt out of it. Like what is like on a different level of the reality. She was like outside of the reality of the film in a way, and that took me out of it. So I feel like a lot of the if there was any unintentional, humor, yeah, I think most of that for me came from her because it felt like she was from a different genre of film altogether in terms of her performance, in terms of the way she was speaking the dialogue.
So for me, that did not happen, but I do think maybe the overall, I don't know, how should I put it? I think the movie really started to gel way more in its second half. Like as a whole, I think maybe like the some of the scenes there, with the actors, sometimes maybe they were a little rusty. You know what I'm saying? But it definitely felt like later on, it just felt like people like everything like sort of folded into place more. You know what I'm saying? And but yeah, I didn't get I maybe I wasn't paying enough attention to that. I do remember just sometimes feeling the ADR-ness a little bit here and there. But overall, no, I actually quite liked the I mean, I didn't feel distracted by the line readings or the dialogue. In fact, I actually loved the cadence of Rhino. You know,
Oh no, Rhino. Okay, like we're talking about performances. Okay, we're talking about performances. Okay, then let me see here. So Alessandro Nivola, plays the Rhino, Fred Heckinger. Okay, um, Christopher Abbott, Russell Crowe, fantastic across the board. Like they are putting in the work to make this movie as entertaining as it is. Like again, like the way they carry themselves, their voices, their attitude. Oh man, every scene with them is like I am locked in. I am like paying attention. This is a really fun film.
and great
Um,
villains,
Great
right?
villains. Yeah, no, I feel like when you mentioned let's see here, Christoph Waltz as Hans Landa in one of your tweets,
Yes.
right? I totally saw that, but I had to say I saw something slightly a little bit different in terms of Christoph Waltz. Um, Bludnovsky from the Green Hornet.
Oh, wait. I actually haven't seen that.
Really? He reminded me
Yeah.
so much more of that because it's like you have someone who's a little bit more of a twerp, but who's trying really hard. And so a lot of the stuff is really awkward, a little bit more pathetic-y, you know?
Hmm.
So I got that. I had that entire thing where it's like, I want to be someone special. I want the way he carried himself, like reminded me so much of Christoph Waltz's Bludnovsky, but he got that. He's definitely trying for a Waltzian, um, like kind of vibe where he's a little bit awkward, but he can switch it to
Yes.
like menacing or like he's kind of nebbish, but he's also intimidating. Like it's that flipping back and forth. And I thought Nivola did a fantastic job with that. I think that he was uncanny in the ways that mattered. Like, ooh, where's this guy going? How is this guy going to flip on this. It was weird, but it was intentionally weird. I can definitely see people being like, "Oh, this was an awful performance," but like,
No, it was
it,
great. It
it
was
felt
like
M Night Shyamalan-y, you know?
I don't know if I would. put it that way, but yeah, I can see that. It's to me, it's just he is a gentleman villain, but
Mm,
he's also a heavy. He's
hmm
like the guy who has to who kind of has to be in both of those camps. Like I think so he's kind of like the guy who looks like he'd be like the scrawny leader who would have like a big hulking
Yeah,
second in command or whatever. But no, he's actually like he's like literally he's literally an essentially like an alien, like he's an animal who's trying to contain like his brutishness like all the time, right? Under so almost like his human form is almost like his disguise at this point, right?
100%.
Yeah, and I loved his take. I just think like, man, this guy, like, okay, he really, um, he commands the room in a way, or rather, in a given scene, like, okay, he really just attracts the. I don't know. He takes the scene. He takes the scene over. He's like the guy like you really want to pay attention to,
Mm,
whenever he's on screen. Um, and so for me it was really, it's like the people are posting all of these cam rips of the rhino's final form, and
right.
and just saying, oh yeah, this is like so awful because look at that, like bad they ruined the character. I'm like, that is like literally the last 5 minutes of the movie.
And
And
also, it would look exactly the same if as if you did an accurate rhino where his face is human. It
yeah,
would look exactly the same. Like, what do you want? Like, oh, like the only difference is the context that he's mutated, right? But if you did the exact same design with the face, like being a human face, and it's like you say, like it's a suit, it would look exactly the same. Like that is just a rhino design. That is
it
just a
is.
rhino design. What do they want? What do they want?
Yeah, I don't know, but to me it was just so disrespectful to the performance, to the writing of the character, because I'm just like, man, you're like reducing this really great villain in this movie down like to his appearance in the last 5 minutes. And it's literally, it's not even like the full scene, it's just a screenshot, right? Like, I mean, so you're reducing you're reducing that character just to like one screenshot of his final CGI like form. And okay, sure, the CGI isn't like always
Great.
great, but to me it was like, it's not a deal breaker. It's not like the thing, okay, yeah, the animals are all CG, we know they're going to be like CG, okay, but like everything else that the movie does is just so complete, like it's not immersion breaking, at least not to me.
Well, no,
Yeah.
100%. Like, I feel like the CGI, it had its own charm. When I say like these things are like throwbacks to like the early 2000s, the CGI, like it was okay and was sparing, and I feel
Hmm.
like it's I would rather have sparing, not that good CGI, not that photorealistic CGI, over like we're gonna inundate you with 30 minutes of the worst visuals you ever fucking seen. You know?
Yeah.
Okay, like that was awkward for like 5 seconds, but the scene moves on. Okay,
Yeah.
like the scene where Kraven is chasing after the guy who's kidnapping his brother, right? Kidnapping the chameleon. Like that scene has like maybe like 3 moments where like the CGI is iffy, but that's a fantastic scene. It's like I was excited for that scene ever since I saw the set photo showing Kraven like Aaron Taylor Johnson with like plastic sleeves over his feet, got those fake prosthetic feet to cover his feet, like hanging off roofs and hanging off of like vans and set photos, like I was excited for this. Like that is like what I wanted to see here. Like, of course, we're not gonna have like Craven in like the jungles or anything like that. We gotta keep it low budget. We gotta keep it like in cities. We can film there cheaper. Um, and like that, but that is still it's a great visual. And I feel like that scene is fantastic. It's probably my favorite, one of my favorite sequences in the film. That is just Craven. It's yeah, but like okay, like if we're gonna reduce it, like just like oh, when Craven jumped from the high rise down to the sidewalk, he turned into like a Play-Doh CGI man for 2 seconds. Like oh, that means it's bad.
Yeah, it's I honestly, I think CGI discourse nowadays in general is
All
just
right,
broken,
so
it's like
we got some comments here. So we're gonna remember about this a little bit. Horrible storytelling in Morbius, Madam Web, Venom 3, and Kraven. Explain what you made of horrible storytelling, because I will agree with you a little bit on Morbius and Madam Web because the editing really left those stories in shambles. But like Kraven, horrible storytelling. I mean, if you might not like the story, but the way it was told was perfectly fine. Like, what do you mean? So what do you mean by horrible storytelling on that? Same with Venom 3. If you don't like the story, that's fine. I'm not gonna try to change your opinion on that. But the way the story was told, you know, pretty direct. Okay, so what do you mean by those? Um, I prefer to watch the first two Hellboy films. Oh, so you prefer to watch two of the best comic movies ever made? Oh, wow. Okay, that's blowing my mind here. Like I would prefer to, eat like a pumpkin pie over a Brussels sprout. Okay, everyone would. Okay, all right. So comment again with your answers to that. And you were saying, Mikhail?
Yeah, I mean, I think the discourse about CGI is broken. I really think I mean there are a lot of different takes on what good CGI is nowadays. I was writing an article about Venom: Let There Be Carnage, and I discovered, holy crap, the VFX industry has been screwed over for a very long time. I mean, there are articles from like the mid 2000s talking about these impossible working conditions, these super short deadlines, especially after Spielberg, I think, wanted a turbocharged post production schedule on War of the Worlds. So now it's like, ideally, when you have as many as many visual effects um, nowadays as movies do, you might want like a year and a half or something to work on those. And a lot of these movies, like uh, they have to put out this many effects in like 6 or to 7 months or something, maybe less. And honestly, and then okay, maybe sometimes the work isn't that great, but again, like the way that people talk about it, it just becomes like so widely exaggerated. I mean, it's like people will point to a single shot in a movie and say that this is illustrative of how bad everything is. And I'm like, well, no, I mean, you watch the whole movie, and quality can vary. I mean, I've seen like movies which have some legitimately great effects, and then there are those that are more noticeable than others, and then there are just honestly a lot of CG nowadays really is invisible. You just like wouldn't even know it was there, but the stuff that people do notice, they're like, oh, this is like an example of like bad CGI and bad storytelling, and like movies like terrible. Anyway, I just feel it's like, no, I'm tired of people pointing to CGI and saying this is a prime example of like why this movie is bad.
No, 100%. It is very unfair to the CGI artists, CGI workhouses, especially like when we talk about Venom 2 and 3, like you're saying, especially right now, they released two deleted scenes for Venom, both of which would have made that film a lot stronger. But
Mm,
the only conceivable reason why they would have been cut is because they would have had to finish the effect shots for those scenes. That's the only reason that scenes would have been cut. They're like 10, 15 seconds each, but they would have helped that film feel a lot more substantial. And so, like,
yeah.
it's a shame because like it trickles down. It trickles down. Like you can't get the shots you need done because of budget reasons, and you have to prioritize the CGI somewhere, and it's you don't have the money to finish those off. So the CGI work gets mishandled, and the films themselves, honestly, suffer because they're missing those scenes that they shot. You just can't get them finished. No, they don't. The studios don't give them the money to finish these shots. It's really ridiculous, and
Yeah,
it's really sad.
or just not enough time, like not enough time to really, put in the work. I mean, eventually the thing has to be delivered, it has to come out. And uh honestly, like I just wish like I look at this stuff and I'm like thinking, man, every single major blockbuster movie, released this year probably could have used a post-production schedule, which was like twice the amount of time that they actually got. Like really.
Oh no, definitely. I mean, it is ridiculous. And let's see here. But I feel like before we got into it, I think that Kraven came out the most unscathed, probably because it's more action heavy. So there was a lot of stuff that they could do in terms of practical stunt work.
Mm,
Of course, and so any of the stuff that they couldn't, it's noticeable CGI, but it's not too apparent most of the time. And of course, there's invisible CGI as you mentioned, but I wouldn't really hold it against them for that. And I feel like this kind of the visuals on the visual side, the CGI stuff, noticeable. When it's noticeable, it's pretty weak. But overall, I think it hangs pretty healthily. But I did want to get into the next part. We get more into this film, specifically this film, and that is you mentioned the wolves. This is an infamously noticeable cut scene. I think the very first trailer had the wolves, where he's in the tundra, being chased, and then he has wolves kill off the guards. And we discussed a little bit earlier, you know, um, on Twitter, about like why this scene might have been cut. I think it's twofold, really. One, you have to kind of keep Craven sympathetic, okay, a little bit, okay. I think that's not the main reason why he was cut, but it's probably one of the reasons why he was cut, because like
could be.
he gets the wolves to kill the guards, and obviously the Russian president is clearly in cahoots with the Russian mafia at some level, all right, but you don't really know. They make the point of showing that when he throws the guard off the railing, he lands on a different railing, you know
Mm.
that when he escapes into prison, he throws the card off the guardrail.
Uh,
Uh,
I, I mean, I
but
guess like yeah, I couldn't really quite tell. I was like, wait, is
oh no,
that the warden of the prison, or is he a mafia boss, or is he? I mean, I guess like he could be both things, like, but somehow he's like operating out of the prison, right? So
exactly.
probably all of the cops working there are corrupt,
Mhm.
and like I wouldn't put it, like I don't have any problem with that. I mean, like back in the old days, it's like cops in Moscow, they would stop you for speeding, you would pay them money and then they would let you go. They wouldn't give you a ticket. It's just like, like you hand them, and that's just how things were done. So yeah. But yeah, but I do think though Craven does murder though a bunch of
Yeah,
people
he
there, right?
does, but like not like you don't. All I'm saying is that you don't really know the capacity of those guards specifically. So I think
Right.
that's and they did show him not kill that one other guard. Um,
Ah, good point.
so like maybe that was the reason. I'm not saying the primary reason, but it's one of the reasons. The primary reason that we settled on was the animal totem stuff. And if you want to delve in with the animal totem stuff that we discussed, I've ceded the forward to you. That way you can talk about the wolves and all that, but and all the other stuff. So if you want to get into that, I'll let you. Or unless you want to do a quick
Uh,
sum up myself.
well, I think you know more
All right.
specifically about the animal totems than I do. So I think, I think I would prefer if you explained that.
All right. So if let's see here. As of the last couple of days, there's been a lot of hubbub about like what Sony's plans have been, what their actual goal was with these films, like where were they heading with these films. And I feel like it's pretty obvious at this point that at some juncture they were definitively planning on introducing the animal totem stuff. Like you have the director of Morbius, Spinoza, talking about it in an interview, saying like, "Oh, Spider-Man, he's like an animal totem. Spider totems, they're all around this kind of universe. That'd be interesting." And one of the reasons why they would have, talked about something like that was because of, one of the big villains and the original villains of the Spider Verse, event that a lot of things are now pulling from is that um let's see here is that let's see here there are energy vampires that travel the multiverse, um that feed on animal totems like special superheroes or beings that represent the energy of an animal, metaphorically or spiritually. And so their favorite is spider totems, and so that's what causes Spider Verse because all they start hunting all the Spider Men from the multiverse, and they gang up to protect themselves, and it's a big thing, the whole thing. So my theory was that at some point Sony really did want to introduce that element in order to, you know, bridge the gap possibly between the Venom stuff and the MCU Spider-Man stuff. Um, and at some point they're like, No, let's backtrack on that. So you have a lot of stuff from Morbius and from Madam Web and from Kraven that seems to really de-emphasize a lot of the supernatural animal specific stuff. Okay, there's the scenes from Madam Web that seem mangled to sort of skew away too much from the supernatural elements of, like, the spider. You have Morbius, where like they don't really get into like why he has like a crypt, and his there seems to be stuff that might have hinted at more mythological basis for his research that seems to have been cut. And then you have Craven the Hunter, right, where we have him controlling animals and stuff, and a scene from a teaser that seems to have been from a cut post-credit scene, um, where he's like in a cave with a torch looking at something, and possibly something, tribal, and so that's my theory, that like when they decided to go with null, and they basically backtracked entirely on animal totems. Okay. um let's see here. More comments from Daniel Garcia. Sony needed better exposition set pieces for these films. They had them, they cut them, as I mentioned before. Sony destroyed a future since the sixth film. No, they didn't. Um, okay, no, they didn't. Okay. So let's see here. So that's my theory, is that why they cut that scene of him controlling animals, because it fed too much into the animal totem stuff. Okay. And they didn't want to make that too apparent, so they condensed that. And my further evidence of that is that one of the biggest scenes that seems to have been really re-edited is when young Calypso in the flashback, um, and her grandmother are talking about like the spirits and the energies of nature. It seems to be really cut around. Like we hardly see the grandmother in frame when she's talking. Okay, obviously if
Mm.
you ADR'd, I'm 100% sure that there was had to be some animal totem stuff mentioned there, because as we're aware of Craven the Hunter, they make it very clear that part of the reason why he has all these animal powers, because his blood got mixed with the blood of a lion. So it's like a Spider-Man-y kind of thing going on there. And then at the end of the movie, of course, he starts wearing the lion pelt, and it's like he's become a lion, he's become a lion man. And so I definitely think that it was animal totem stuff that he cut around. And yeah,
I think you might be onto something there because I definitely remember watching that scene and it just felt kind of weird the way they were kind of, yeah, like the way it was kind of edited. And I remember there seemed to be some ADR there.
100%. Like we barely hear whatever the grandmother really said as far as that scene originally. But I do want to heed the floor to our new guest, Roliver Queen. And if you introduce yourself and just give your first initial impression of the film. You just got finished watching it, right?
Yeah, just got finished watching. What's going on, guys? Roliver Queen here. And yeah, I was entertained, man. Like that's what I love about these Sony movies. I just be entertained. They had a beginning, a middle, and the end. I didn't feel like stuff was being beat over my head, and I had a fun time. This movie was fun. Like,
Where
definitely.
would you rank it among the rest of these?
I have to take out Morbius because I didn't see Morbius. I think the only ones I seen was Madam Web. Why do I feel like I'm missing another one in between that? Um,
No, there's just the three Venoms, Madam Web, and
okay.
and Craven here. And
So Venom, Madam Web, and Craven. I guess Venom would obviously be first, as I really enjoy those movies. Um, I think this one would be second. Madam Web would be third. But all across the board, these were just enjoyable movies. I don't know. I kind of want to say I enjoyed this one a little bit more than the others, but actually, no. I enjoyed, yeah, Venom and Craven more than Madam Web, but Madam Web was pretty good. But yeah, those are my initial thoughts. I had fun with the movie, man.
yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. We were talking about like our theories to catch you up, um, about like the first couple of scenes where like there was obviously a cut, if you saw the trailers, a cut moment from the prologue where he's escaping from the Russian prison, or in the
Mhm.
trailers, you see that he commands using his animal telepathy for the wolves to kill the guards that are chasing him. That's
Mhm.
not in the film. Like, he just kind of gives them the slip. And so we're wondering, like, well, what that could have been like. And my theory was because we also um, had at the prologue happens that when we get the flashback when he's a teenager,
Mhm.
when we meet like his love interest, meeting with her like tarot card reading grandmother. That scene is very chopped up. Like the grandmother's dialogue is almost all ADR. She's almost always off screen when she's talking. And so
Mhm.
like we're talking about like how Sony probably before they settled on Null probably wanted to introduce Morlun and the vampires, and they probably wanted to
Mm.
like do an animal totem stuff because a lot of stuff like that was cut out of Madam Web as well. Because and so like they probably cut out like we want to do Null. All this stuff is not going to go anywhere, so cut it out of your films, okay? And so that's probably what we were thinking here. But moving ahead into the prologue, I really like the prologue. I know Mikhail on Twitter was like, "I'm glad that this movie won't have a prologue," and we were laughing that.
Okay, yeah. Let me qualify that. I just feel that a lot of the times prologues are completely unnecessary, and they tend to reveal way more information to the audience. Like they serve that purpose. They're not there to really further the story, but they are often to just give people like a teaser of what's to come, but also to reveal things ahead of time. So things that normally would come up in the course of the story and become reveals. It's kind of like you're getting that before the mystery or anything.
Mm.
So I actually like it when movies actually, okay, maybe they'll start off without giving you a lot of context for something, and then they'll flash back to that. So I really appreciated the fact that, okay, Kraven did not do the prologue, but then immediately after the opening 8-9 minute sequence, right? Like they do go into flashback. And I was like, yeah, wait a minute. Okay, I'm on board with this, right? Because it's like, first you have because first you have that opening sequence that sets up the story, sets it in motion, but also raises a lot of questions. Then you go back in time, and questions are answered, and also they introduce that way a lot of these new important characters and developments that are going to factor into things later on. So really, like, I appreciate this kind of approach as opposed to no, let's just do like a prologue with like Null like talking to the viewer and like sending, I mean, that stuff is just like, no, I mean, you could have held that as that has nothing to do with the main characters, and here everything has to do with the main characters. So yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna ban this guy. He's just spamming the comments, but I did like this. Kraven equals streaming soon. You know what? Good, because I can't wait to watch it again. I really can't. I'm gonna ban this guy. He's just spamming the comments right now. All right, there we go. Anyway, so I 100% agree. But I thought this was a really effective prologue. Because I did love. I love that we got a great look at Russell Crowe. I think he's fantastic. He's
Mhm.
just really giving this film like a lot of the fun, like over the top attitude. I think he's got a great kind of persona. He's got a great swagger to him. He's fun. He's really fun. Like he's put to much better use here than he was as Zeus in Thor 4, 100%. And
Oh, I
uh,
forgot he actually. Oh my God! Yeah, he
Yo,
played Zeus.
same. I
yeah,
forgot
I mean,
about that too.
if you gotta weigh them, okay, you gotta weigh them. Okay, Kraven better than the Thor franchise? Maybe.
You cooking over there? You cooking? You cooking?
Okay. I'm about to put like a better than meme. Kraven better than, and then like all the fucking Thor movies.
Oh, your mentions are gonna be on fire, my
I'm gonna do
friend.
it. I'm gonna do it. 'Cause I don't even like the first Thor. I don't even like the first Thor. Everyone's like, oh, no, the first Thor is too
The
good.
first one is it's cool. It's decent.
I found it pretty lame. It's always so funny. People are like, remember what they took from you. It's like one cool shot from the first store, but then the first store is like it's really 90% a very unfunny rom com. You forget that. We're like, oh, here's a
It
screenshot of
gets
Thor looking cool.
it gets a lot of points for introducing Loki, who is still the best Marvel villain.
But he's not even good in that.
No, what? No, Loki is great in that. No,
Loki, I never liked Loki until the show. 100%.
Oh,
I did not care for him at all.
I'm sorry. I loved Loki in the first Thor. He was sort of like the brightest part of that.
Eh,
But also, speaking of prologues, I would say Thor would have really benefited from actually doing a flat, from not like like going into Asgard and telling us his entire thing. Like if they treated him as a mystery and then did the flashback, when they actually
Mm.
find out like who he is, like okay, I that would have worked so much better. So yeah, another reason why Kraven is better than Thor.
100%. Yeah, moving ahead into again, great energy, and we get like nebbish Alessandro Nivola here. And I loved it because it's like this is just ripping off Iron Man 3. Okay, this is just the Aldrich Killian introduction. Oh, here's this nerd. I don't have to pay attention to him, and then he becomes like the threat later on. It's just out of Iron Man 3 entirely with the Rhino. And I love that like they made him having asthma a plot point. As someone who had asthma as a kid, like I felt so seen. I really did. Like the villain has asthma, so good. I'd also, become a Rhino man to get rid of my asthma. I also would. That'd be me. Like, give me it. Give me the Rhino potion. Um,
Or the
uh,
Jackal potion. I think
yeah,
it's the
yeah,
Jackal potion.
exactly. Was that the Jackal? I don't
Uh,
remember the Jackal.
well, he said that he went to see Dr. Miles Warren
Oh,
in
I
New
guess that is the
York.
Jackal.
Yeah.
So 100%. This Craven confirms, in my view, that a lot of this was probably like reused ideas from the Amazing Spider-Man 3. Because the main
Mm.
Spider-Man 3 was also going to introduce the Jackal. It was also and here's my point again. Like Madam Web, I'm pretty sure a portion of the ADR went to not mentioning Oscorp, to removing all mention of Oscorp, because like I went to see a doctor in New York. He probably said Oscorp.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Mm.
Probably said Oscorp at some point. Like Madam Web, I'm 100% sure that Ezekiel was working with Oscorp. Okay, and I think that they just want to get rid of all mention of that. Um, but and it kind of, when we see Chameleon at the end, it kind of fits with like what the Amazing Spider-Man 2 was doing, where like all of the villains were going to have like Oscorp technology based origins because they had that room with all the villain stuff, and Chameleon was going to be part of that. So I definitely think that this is a lot of reused ideas from that, or at least ideas that they had percolating since then. Um, but yeah, no, I love that introduction. And my only issue with that is that I think it plays its hands too much into the supernatural stuff, and like it felt a little cheesy in the wrong way when he's like, when his blood is mixing with the lions, you hear the voodoo grandmother's voice going, "The power of the wind," and you see like a bird screech, "The power of the ground," and you hear like a lion roar. Like, is he a Power Ranger? Like, what's going on here? Is this Shazam? Strength of Hercules. Speed of Zeus. What's going on here? Like, it felt like that. Like he's getting a power up. Like that I felt like it played its hand too much. It felt awkward. Overall, I love that sequence. I think that it got everything off on a great standing, and I love the little kid playing Chameleon. I love both actors playing Chameleon. I love the little kid version of the adult actor, and I love how, for most part, like they edged into him being Chameleon, without being embarrassing about it. Like, yeah, they have Russell Crowe
Mm.
mention he's Chameleon, but I love that they mention, they kind of like sort of have these beats where he's picking up on mannerisms, and he's copying their voice to like make fun of them and to like disorient them a little bit, put them off guard. I love that stuff. I really
I,
did.
I'm not gonna lie, like, because I was like multitasking when I was like watching this movie, but also part of me thought was like, wow, this guy's really good at voices. And then at the end, oh crap. Oh, this is what this is setting up. All right.
Other than when like Russell Crowe says it, like it's pretty subtle. I think it's not like, oh, we're gonna beat you over the head with it so much. No, I thought it was pretty subtle. It was really
Mhm.
fun. It kind of the character brief. I would have loved one moment where like it was like the character all along. That's what I always mention on Twitter. Like, I want Craven the Hunter to have one moment where it's like, oh yeah, this is it. Um, let's see here. Uh, but it didn't happen. But I did love that they kept playing around with it. Like they did, and that made it. The guy has a great attitude. The guy has great energy. The actor Fred Heckinger has great energy as Chameleon. I would love to see him pour it over. Everyone's like saying like, they're going to cancel all these movies, or they're going to reboot. Whatever happens, like I do want to see that actor play Chameleon again
Okay,
in like MCU movie or another Spider-Man movie and the rebooted Sonyverse, whatever they do. I do want to see him again.
I do
Yeah.
have a question, and maybe this is ahead, so I do
No
apologize.
problem.
Is that 100% confirmed that they're
No,
canceling it?
no, everything's just rumors right now.
Okay, all right, okay.
It's not look, I would say this. What happened was somebody published an article that said that basically led people to believe that, oh, they're like canceling the whole universe. Naturally, everybody in social media starts like saying, oh, like the universe is over, it's like done with. And I mean, even if you read the article, though, what it says is that no, what they're doing is they are pausing, development on further spin-offs in the Venomverse, or what I call the Venomverse branch right now. Like if you
Hmm.
divide it up into, okay, there's the Tom Holland, MCU Spider-Man
Hmm.
branch, then there's the Miles Morales Spider-Verse branch, and then there's the live action Venomverse stuff wherein, they were building this larger world for Spider-Man. Never unfortunately got around to introducing Spider-Man for a bunch of reasons that there's no time to get into that right now. But
Hmm.
basically, like so really like all it is that like, oh, okay, so none of these other movies have made money, so now they're trying to refocus on what's actually working. And I'm pretty sure, so what that means is that like, no, the universe as a whole is going to keep going. They're almost certain to bring Venom, to keep him around because he made money, he's popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is, so I'm inclined to believe that, okay, they might very well do like Spider-Man 4's, like Spider-Man versus meets Venom or whatever. It's just like, they're not going to be developing standalone spin-off movies based on the ancillary characters. Rather, no, they're going to try to do proper spin-offs going forward with
Okay.
with probably the Spider-Verse as their base, right? Like, so there's
Mhm.
already like a Gwen Stacy spin-off that's going to happen at some point in the future, and Spider Noir is still in development and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. So I okay, perfect. Because the way the way people made it seem was like it was like a definitive thing. It was like I haven't seen no legitimate site state that it's over. So thank you for giving me that extra context. By the way.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely. But so moving ahead into the film, I had to say the one part of the film that more than any of the gore that really got me, okay, was when young Kraven is like out of the hospital. He's got through like his near death experience. He's gone through his Spider Wolf, Wolf Man, Lion Man transformation, whatever. um, it's very Spider-Man one-y, okay? Like, oh man, I've woken up with like all this strength and power. Like it's very Spider-Man one-y. I like that. It's a lot of parallels between him and Peter Parker.
Also
Um,
with Jesus, he kind of dies, gets
yeah,
resurrected, goes off into the wilderness.
he's the animal Jesus. That's true. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, he's the Messiah in it. But let's see here. One thing that startled me more than any of the gore because like the rated R, finally rated R Sony movie, right? Um, the more than any of the gore, the one thing that startled me is when his father is like, "Come in here, I know that you're scared after your near-death experience, so don't worry." And then he sees like the mounted head of the lion, and like that got me because like I didn't expect that. It kind of shook me because one, that lion deserved to die, man. It was like just minding a little business, even let him go, like he knew. So like it felt like kind of a dick move to kill the lion, like and just see it like that. It really startled me, and it startled Craven as well. So effective shot. Um, and I did love. One thing, skipping ahead to the end, it felt kind of weird to like make like that lion like the big central point, like they even becomes like his vest, and then like have the vest itself, the ones that covering the torso, the torso body portion of the vest, not
Mm.
have like the definable face. 'Cause that's the whole
Hmm.
thing. Where like where Craven's kind of iconic looks, like wears a vest that has a lion head on it, right? But like when you actually do that, you make that like the actual plot point there. You give him an emotional connection to that lion and everything. You can barely tell that's a lion face on his chest, because they basically just
Mm.
smooth it out. I thought that was pretty
Hmm.
funny. Like you went through all this trouble to set that up, and it doesn't quite look good, as good as that. But So the prologue itself, I thought overall very effective, very fun. Um, I have some quibbles with it, but I think it does really, get everything to a good start. I think Russell Crowe is great in it. I didn't even mind Teen Craven. I think that he's got good moxie. He reminds me of like what who they should have cast as Nathan Drake, as young Nathan Drake, instead of
Mm.
Tom Holland. Like this is the guy they
Oh,
should have cast for Uncharted, not Tom Holland. Like this guy I can believe as a young we want the CW audience Nathan Drake. You know, this is the guy.
Yeah. I like the prologue also. Again, I'm pretty sure I've said this a lot of the time. I'm a big sucker for gangster movies.
Go
Like
ahead.
this gave me gangster movie vibes. I was like, okay, I'm here for it. The whole thing with the jail. And then even the flashbacks as well to like when he was a kid. I thought they were pretty well casted. I thought there was a good contrast between when they were young and older. So typically I don't think a lot of movies they're very hit or miss with things like that. But I think there was like a good balance and a good contrast. Like, okay, I can see the connections there. The stuff with like how he got his powers. Um, you mentioned Spider-Man 1. I kind of wish we got a little bit more of that because with Spider-Man 1, we spent time with Peter learning how to adjust. I felt like that was like a good 45 minutes, maybe even more of just like Peter learning how to adjust. But with this, it was more just like we didn't get to spend too much time. I was like, we spent a little bit of time here. He got bit. He went through the whole thing in his mind. And then from then on, it was more just like, okay, he has his powers, but we didn't see the journey of it. But again, prologue overall, I still enjoyed it too.
Fantastic. And let's see here. So the next section of the film, well, not before the prologue ends, right, and all that. I have to say, like, the movie, I think has very good eye for things, and it's a very. I think that like it gives it like a level of like kind of like a visually grounded center
Mm-hmm.
that you don't really get a lot of these days. Like I don't think I wouldn't call it Man of Steel esque, but it did give me that kind of like we're gonna taper it down, kind of give a humanistic kind of vibe to things. Especially
Mm-hmm.
here, like I was kind of really like struck by one of the visuals, like when he meets the two poachers as a teenager who killed all of his new buffalo friends. Um, or bull friends or something like that's sad. Like he has a connection with one of them, and then they all end up being murdered. He kills one of them with like a knife to the face, and then he just pounces on the other one and starts punching him to death. Right? You pull back to like the horizon, and you just see like Teen Craven like in the very very distance, like a small silhouette, just pounding. Like that's a great shot.
that
That was
was
a great.
that was a great shot. That really stood out to me. Like you could just tell that the movie was trying to be a bit more ambitious than the average blockbuster in terms of things like cinematography and blocking and stuff like that. Yeah, so I just remember seeing that. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I see what you guys are doing.
No, there's definitely. So let's see. Moving ahead, we have like I think the one piece that was probably part of most trailers. Honestly, the very very advertised piece where he um, gets with some of these poachers and he bites that guy's nose off. Um, again, like I feel like you could get rid of some of the CGI blood and this still would have been like PG-13 ish. Honestly, for the most part. I feel like they really went overboard with the digital blood just to get this a rated R. And I don't mind it. I don't mind CGI blood as much as many people do. It looks kind of goofy, but like that's what these films are. If you're watching a slasher film,
Uh,
CGI
I,
blood doesn't matter to me.
I honestly don't think people are allowed to use squibs anymore. I mean, from everything I've gathered, it's like I think there's been like a moratorium on that stuff. So it's almost like you have to go with CG blood, by default.
Yeah, but like it was very, very. Um, let's see here. Um, very, very obvious. It's very, very in your face. It felt very kind of gummy. Looked very gummy, very bright. But I thought that was a really fun scene as well. Like, yeah, I love the way he kind of scrambles, and it was a very little fun little vignette. Like where does it really fit in the nature of things? Really, like you don't really need a scene like this, but it's great to like hammer home that he's still going after poachers. It's great to sort of get him into the mix there again, showing there's not a lot of room in this film for to show him like hunting
Yeah.
men. So like he says he does. He's not hunting animals, so you got to hunt like these gangsters. So it's great to to have a piece where he can just get in there and do this. I love again. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson is fantastic as Kraven in terms of physicality. Like you can really tell him and the stunt team and everything that handle this. They
Mhm.
know what to do. I love like slides into the cars. He rebounds onto the pickup, the back truck of it, where all the horns are being held, flips over into the window in the windshield. It's fantastic, very great stuff. It's very fluid, a lot of fluid action here. You're never lost. It's not confusing. It's not muddled. It's not too much. Not overbearing action. I thought almost all the action was really really on point here with this film.
I wanted to add that I really liked this scene, and I mean, I personally thought it was just nice how the movie knows how to build to these more outlandish, over the top moments. So even though so here, like you see like a gradual escalation of that level of R-rated violence. So when he actually bites off like that nose, yeah, that's like kind of an animalistic, more over the top thing than we've seen so far, and I kind of appreciated, this sort of gradual escalation. I will say though that I think this is the one point in the movie though where I felt like, huh, that was a weird cut, because it just like the way it kind of went into that next scene where he, like shoots a guy with the arrow. Like I was just like, wait a minute, did we skip over something? Because like the chase kind of ended, but then it just sort of goes over there, and I'm pretty sure something there must have been cut.
No, I can definitely tell. Yeah, I had the same idea. Like the scene ends, I think, with like him looking over and like, huh, like kind of shrugging a little bit, and it feels like an awkward little beat to the cut on. And I totally agree that maybe there was a little bit more to that, but not really that we need it because I think that um, it does help the punchline of the next scene land longer, land better.
Hmm.
I did love that part where like the last remaining poacher guns are like, yeah, don't worry, we killed that guy that killed that man, don't worry. Like one, he's lying, but I love that he's also like immediately called out on it by Kraven being there. So it's really good. um let's see here. And let's see, I do love that he's only keeping him alive just enough to see if he needs him anymore, because yeah, if he can't find his name, he's like, that's the only thing he's doing. Like he's like, I need to find your name on here so I can make sure to cross it off. So like if he can't find it, he'll need to like have him, I was imagining like he's having spell it out for him so he can just cross it off manually. But if you can find it, then that he doesn't need it anymore. So the moment he finds it, boom, he's done. Which I thought was really fun. It just shows how like much he doesn't care about the rest of these people. He
Yeah.
doesn't see them as human.
Mm.
At the same time though, I think I couldn't help but wonder if this was kind of a Green Arrow reference, because if you remember, like
Yeah, the list.
yeah, right, the list, and I mean, he kills the guy like with an arrow, right? So but yeah, but overall, yeah, I thought it was it's interesting how the movie really does build this notion of Craven. I think it kind of shows though that Craven is he's not a long term planner. Like he does this stuff. It's interesting how he basically kicks off a gang war, which leads to a lot of unintended consequences, right? And as a whole, I like the idea of the list, although I'm not sure it was really revisited enough throughout the movie. Like they say, like, okay, you're on his list. There's only one way you're getting off, but we don't really see, but we don't really see that come back all
Yeah,
that
we only
much.
see the list once. That's it. When he kills Chorney, he gets back to his pad, he opens up the thing, and he just crosses the name off when he kills the guy in the prison. And it's so funny because when that's the only shot, that's the only time we see the list, right? It's the only time in the movie. Just that one shot, and you see like that hoax that went around like yesterday or the day before yesterday, where like someone took that screenshot the only time, the one time in the movie we see the list. They took a screenshot of that camera from the camera, right, and they edited it to say null, and everyone, like so many people bought it. Like this is the post-credit scene for Kraven. You see his list, and he wrote
Oh
null on it.
boy.
And like, but like that is the only time we see the list in the film.
My
So it was really funny
God.
to see it.
Oh god, I did not know about that, but that is hilarious.
This also makes me wonder, like, just realistically, how long was this movie supposed to be? Because it's like, even the stuff I mentioned earlier, and then the stuff that you're mentioning now about the list, like how much was cut? Like, I'm not trying to go into like a whole release to whatever cut, but just like, yeah, how many corners did you have to cut? Like, what would this movie have been if we didn't have to cut so much?
I don't think that, like, in terms of what they actually shot, I would be shocked if a lot was cut, because is it like me and Mikhail were saying that this feels like the most complete kind of Sony film. Like you don't really see like a lot of things. You can't really see the seams a lot with like
Mhm.
Venom and Madam Web and Morbius. You can see like where things are stitched together because things
Yeah.
are missing. This one, like, there's not a lot that you can tell is missing at all. So I'll be shocked if a lot was cut. I think like this is probably as close to whatever they were shooting as any of these
Mm,
films ever got. It's just that it is kind of it does feel like the list stuff and a lot of stuff near the end. It feels like not like they were cut, but more like they were set up for future movies. You know, like
okay.
we're gonna introduce this now so we can develop more in a sequel kind of thing. You know.
Yeah. Okay.
But with the Null stuff, just, people are like, really? They wanted Kraven to fight Null? He should be only fighting Iron Man. I hate that kind of stuff because, one, like, it reminds me of this quote from Adam Pearson, the guy who played opposite Sebastian Stan in A Different Man. There was an interview where it's like, "What's your favorite underdog movie?" Right? And Adam Pearson, he says, Legally Blonde. Everyone always says Rocky, but Rocky doesn't seem like that great underdog movie because Sylvester Stallone's a built guy. He ain't playing a boxer. It's like, he could probably really do boxing. That's not really much of an underdog because he's strong. Legally Blonde. Reese Witherspoon's character is like a stereotypical kind of blonde, kind of, everyone thinks she's airhead. So her becoming a really professional, respected lawyer is like big gap. Like she really does go through a lot to do that. So that's why I feel like when people say no, she only fight the Avengers, who cared about him fighting the Vulture? Like that's like that to me. Like one, like, the Vultures could the Avengers could probably handle Null. Like I'm not doubting that, but it would just be more interesting to me to see how the Vulture or Kraven would fight Null. Like I want to see what they would do. Like, yeah, that's interesting. Like, yeah, man, what would they pull out?
Yeah, we can, like, we have like a base idea of how an Avengers fight with Null would go. You can be way more creative with like a Kraven or like a Vultures. Oh, what could they pull out their ass to actually make this fight interesting? Like that's more entertaining. Whatever scenario you could think of for the Avengers, that's probably how it'll go. But it's just the little guy. We'll see what you can do over here, man. And that's more entertaining to me. So I entertain the idea of no fighting off against like Kraven or anybody else that's like smaller too. I'm here for it.
Yeah. Like, see, like that's the reason why Green Arrow was one of the best, Justice Leaguers. That's the reason why he carried that book, because it's always so fun to see him like pull whatever arrow out of his ass.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's why I hated that. Like I felt it like, one, it was a lame hoax. Okay, and like, you know what? If you don't like these films, just say why you don't like them. Don't invent stuff to be mad at.
People invent stuff to be mad at all the time, unfortunately.
Yep.
It's really,
now you can get paid for it.
Get a life, and then, and if it is your life to get mad at fake stuff, then you're wasting your life. Okay, you really are. All right. So moving ahead, let's see here. Again, I think that the way they set up Calypso as a teenager was a little bit more interesting than how they use her as an adult, because in the teenagers you see that she's connected to her grandmother, that she let's see here, has experience with like the mystical side, that she maybe has like the gift because she's the one who does like the accurate reading of like meeting Kraven and needing to save his life and stuff like that. So like kind of implies that maybe she is also magically inclined. But then when we meet her as an adult, she's like just like the voice of reason normal person, and like that's pretty lame. Like she didn't really do much other than like kind of comment on like the stuff Kraven is doing, which I thought was pretty disappointing. I thought they were kind of setting up her to be more interesting as an adult than she really is.
Although, he did take out Shorne apparently as a way of thanking her, so I would say that ties it back in together. And then, of course, there's all the stuff that happens later, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like her as like a character. You just described like her as a role within the story, but like her as a
Yeah.
character is pretty not that interesting.
Yeah, I agree. Like from the beginning, I was expecting a little bit more. But yeah, by the time we get her, she's just a lawyer, and we do revisit like the mystical stuff like a little bit later, but I feel like they were very loose with that, like very very loosey goosey. It's almost barely touched upon except when it's needed, and the rest of the time she's kind of just like, I'm sorry, but like a whatever character.
Like yeah, very cardboard.
Yeah,
Like she's just, like basically like the first time we meet her as an adult, it's just to recap the beginning. You know,
yeah.
like
Mhm.
well, we're getting her reaction to the beginning, but like okay, but like she's basically like she's crusading lawyer. So I feel like it would be more interesting to like show more of that side, specifically because the stuff that she's going against is like this greater mafia stuff that Kraven is also trying to do. So maybe elaborating more on that would have been cool, and maybe could have shown their bond a little bit more. Like
And
it,
I think it's also a little bit like probably lazy is the word, because like again I just watched it, so I apologize if it's not completely accurate. But didn't she say, yeah, my parents were lawyers, so I just became a lawyer as well, if I'm not mistaken, something along those lines?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I think they could have been a little bit more like effort there. I was like,
Yeah,
okay,
it's the same. Maybe give her like a personal reason to become
yeah,
a lawyer, like a really personal one. Because they can mention that she's crusading, but why is she crusading? Like, give her like
hmm
some backstory. Maybe like these poachers. Her grandmother. Her grandmother seems to live in the jungle on the savannah.
hmm
So maybe like one of them did something there. And that caused her to like want to go against all these poachers and
exactly.
these mafia. Something like just something to give her a little more flavor that she and Craven can connect with together, because they're
hmm
both going after the same guys. So give them a reason that they can bond over.
Yeah.
Something like that. I don't know, whatever. So moving ahead, we're introduced to the Rhino, and I love his design as like a dude. He looks like a little schoolboy with his book bag the entire movie, and he's great. I love Alessandro Nivola. I'm really disappointed that a lot of his film endeavors are going kind of south. Yeah, he was in the Sopranos movie, which was not good. I enjoyed parts of it, but it was not good. He was the face of that, and so it was a bit of a disappointment when that failed. And then he was also here, Kraven, which is also flopping. Um, so it's a shame because he's a good actor, and I think that he as the Rhino, especially the nebbish, awkward, dorky human version of the Rhino, is so good. Like he's like so over the top and wacky and eccentric. He felt very much like the kind of version of this character that they would do, and as like in the early 2000s. Like we're just gonna have like the name of the character and just have some wacky fun with it, and just name it that character. Because we have the rights to the name, so let's just write like this really silly villain, and we have the rights to the comic character name, so let's just slap it on there. And that's how these movies be made all the time, and I really enjoy that. That's how they're still made. So I have a lot of fun with him when we see him again as like this really dorky guy, and then when we get like later on when he does the whole Dark Knight, only one of you can join me at the Joker kind of thing, and that was also really good. Uh,
Yeah, he is. It's interesting because he is kind of like both brains and broad. He is kind of the guy who wants to be like he's a gentleman villain in many ways. He wants to be, kind of like more manipulative, more cunning and everything. But also like he has this this animalistic side of himself that he seemingly wants to suppress, even though that's arguably what's made him, like as powerful as he is. Like, it's fascinating how in my mind, this is a movie where, there is indeed like this notion of, like what is power, right? Like, and what is or what is like this like like what does it mean like to be like strong? Well, on some level, being strong, I guess, means being kind of a narcissist and basically surrounding yourself with people who are
Mhm.
weaker, or something, which is pretty much in my mind what Russell Crowe's character does. Like, this is a guy, these are all people that want you to that want to project strength, right?
Mhm.
And when in reality they might not be all that. So I find it fascinating how like the Rhino seems to be almost like a guy who's like he seems to have taken that idea, like he was told by this guy that he apparently kind of revered in his youth, that like, you're just a nobody, you're not even worth speaking to me. And he's like, okay, well then I'm gonna like, I'm gonna take you down, like one day I'm gonna rise, I'm gonna like, I'm gonna like become like the baddest motherfucker, like all around, right? Like, and still it's like he kind of gets like this power, but he can't like even use it all that much because it's actually such a pain. I
Mhm.
mean, right? Like, I don't know. I thought it was a great. I honestly like thought it was just in the context, that he was used for. Like, this was a great character and a great performance, and I'm like, really, he's a and so to me, like, yeah, he's a standout villain, and I'm just still kind of pissed that so many people are trying to say, oh, the Rhino in this movie sucks, and I'm like, no, the Rhino is great. I mean, he's such a step up, from what the Amazing Spider-Man 2 did with that character. you know
Yeah, I also agree. Because normally a guy like that, he wouldn't portray Rhino energy to me. But like over time, I was like, oh wait, you know what? You're convincing me. You're doing a really good job at convincing me.
Right.
And then even like I felt like it was like a gradual build to when we actually got to see him as Rhino. Like they
Mhm.
didn't blow their load on like the first couple seconds. No, this was a tease up until the end. Then, good. What was this? Was the actual thing perfect? But no. But given the context of it, oh yeah, I liked it.
I love that it was a gradual build.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so many movies, it's just like they just reveal like the full, like appearance or whatever. And I'm like, whatever happened to just, like letting it build and then like actually unleashing it, right? At the moment where it has the most impact, you know?
No, definitely, and I'd love, again, the first scene where we start to like get the inkling of what's going on. But again, it's a very early 2000s thing, as I mentioned before. Like Kraven and all these movies really are like, what can we do that's cheap but sounds cool? Okay, that's that's
Mhm.
that's kind of like what the early 2000s comic movies are always like. We gotta do it on a cheap, but we gotta make it look cool. What can we do? And so I feel like having like the Rhino, just slowly get his powers building up like over his body. It's cheap because you can cover it. You can just basically just like cover it over, like, oh, it's happening underneath his clothes,
Yeah.
Which,
And
but it's cool because then you get the part where like the ex henchman of the guy from the beginning, they come to prison, try to shoot him, try to gun him down, but like, I was wearing like a living bulletproof vest already, and then he gets them killed, and I think that's great.
and I to go back to like this cheap part, like I want to say there's like a genius to it as well because then you're focusing more on like the character building versus like the actual just like villain. Like of course that's like a thing, but just like we're focusing more on like okay, how did this villain get here? So by the time it gets like the big massive the suit or whatever it is, there's so much groundwork there. So whether or not the actual suit looks good or whatever, there's still like a good foundation so that okay, well, it works. Like it works.
No, no, 100%. And as you were mentioning with like the mob stuff that you seem to have really kind of, caught on to, when we, like, it kind of, I love how it plays into like that, like where like he's meeting these guys like in the middle of nowhere. They have like
Hmm.
cars against them. And it was very great staging. I love the way a lot of these scenes are staged. Like they feel
Hmm.
like they're from a movie, you know? I'm sorry, but like, so many things now like a green screen. They use the volume, all that kind of stuff. This feels like I'm watching like something from like a crime show, you know like
Yes.
it has that vibe to it. I love it. I love it.
And can I add to that that I was absolutely taken with the Rhino's hideout or home or whatever it was, because that setting, I
It's
mean,
such a
it's
supervillain lair, man. It's so good.
yeah, but like he has like those giant propellers and everything, and I'm like feeling, wait, is this like a warehouse from the 90s or something? Because I remember watching movies from like the 80s and 90s, and I think they were crime films where you would see these scenes with these giant, like industrial fans or something, and I'm just like, if anything, like that place looked so visually, I don't know, like interesting, like
Yeah,
that.
no, these are unique locations. Like they like the Chameleon's nightclub. Like the hexagonal dome that Kraven lives in. And I think like there's lots of computer servers in where the Rhino was out. I think those fans, if they're meant to have a use, are for like his computer servers. Okay, I think there
Oh,
was
that
computer servers.
okay.
Um,
That would make sense. I think I missed the server part, but that
Maybe.
makes sense.
I think I'll need to rewatch it when it comes on digital, but I'm pretty sure that's what that was. So like, yeah, like a lot of unique locations. I kept bouncing back and forth places, but lots of great set design. Again, visually, I think these movies just they nailed it. They hit the nail on the head. They really do kind of put in the work there. But moving ahead a little bit to Chameleon's nightclub, I love that. Again, I love the kind of energy attitude Chameleon has when we first see him as an adult, like he's just singing around, he's great at like at pulling voices. It's really fun stuff. But also like Rhino tries to do like a Godfather 2 kind of thing by killing off the head of the family kind of stuff. And it's fun stuff. It really is. And I love that entire scene because like you have like the mafia boss. Let's see here, disappointed in his son, and Russell Crowe knows exactly the type of energy to give that scene. It feels like from a different movie. It feels like this is like one of the few times really where when people say like, oh, this superhero movie is not superhero movie plus different genre. Scenes like those actually hit the mark more than like some people saying, oh, Winter Soldier is actually like a deep spy thriller. No, no, not at all. But if you look at like the kind of Russian mob scenes of Kraven in isolation, you could be this. They're pretty close to that kind of genre stuff. I love it.
I mean, honestly, for being 100% honest here, you can even make that into its own little spin-off. Like damn near something close to like the Penguin or whatever. I haven't seen all the Penguin, but yeah, like the consistency of the vibe right there, and I think how well they balance the themes. I think you can snatch a little something here, make maybe like a little 3 or 4 episode little spin off, and
Yeah,
then you keep it
exactly.
going.
Like the Penguin, like make a spin-off miniseries about the Chameleon, consolidating power.
I would watch that.
I would watch
100%.
I would watch that as well. I mean, I think they do a really good job of emulating that genre, but also grounding it in a way, like grounding it in those relationships. Like the moment where Russell Crowe, what was his name? What was the character's name? Like Nikolai, right? Like, I mean, he really like tears his son down. But to me, that was a very interesting scene. Like you look at that character throughout the movie, and you get the sense that he might just be keeping his son around just so he has somebody that he can like lord over, that he can feel constantly superior to. Because he's like such a narcissist. He has this huge ego, right? Like, I mean, he wants to, and he's he wants to hunt for sport, right? But he just wants to prove himself superior, all the time.
That's a great point, because the parallelism between Kraven himself and the lion his father kills is like it's like his father sees his son Kraven as like the lion, like he's trying to hunt him down. He's trying to make him part of his group. Like he needs to take him down. If he's able to hunt his own son, bring him into the fold, then he's won. Because he knows his son is like the unkillable one. Like he knows his son is the powerful one. That's what he mentioned at the end, where like, I sicked him on you because I know you could take it. Like he betrayed his own son because he knew his son was stronger than him. So he wants to beat his own son, really, in order, because that's him. Like, I haven't killed the lion. That's why he gives him the lion vest made from the lion's head, because he knows that the lion isn't dead. It's his son. It's parallels, symbolism. This movie's great. 10 out of 10.
No, really. I mean, yeah, I second that, like, totally.
Anyway, moving ahead a little bit. Let's see. Then we get introduced to the best character in the movie. Okay, because the Rhino gets intel that that Kraven is actually Kravenoff, which is the stupidest thing. Oh, it was the stupidest. Like, oh man, he's really hiding his identity there. Because they mentioned it sometimes. You know, Sergey is Kraven. Like, what do you mean Sergey is Kraven? You know?
Wasn't it more like, he's the hunter
Yes,
thing?
yes,
Like,
but they also include Kraven as if it was like another pseudonym when they mentioned Kraven. Kraven is Kravenoff, that kind of thing. Like, oh wow, man. Don't.
Hey, I was shocked. Okay, I was like, oh my gosh, you can't be.
He's done. I love how like they make it like no one knows if the hunter's real or not. He's like a ghost, and then like you get the evidence that he's Kraven, and it's like a shot of him climbing up the railing, looking straight into the camera, and like seeing the camera, and then like knocking it off a little bit. Like, yeah, that's a ghost. Okay, he was right there in front of the camera in the footage.
He's a mythic figure, right? Like, he's kind of like the John Wick of the underworld here. The hunter is like the Baba Yaga of this world,
right? But, like, come on.
I mean, people can't believe that a guy, I mean, I really like this aspect, actually, that like he already has a kind of a mythic status built up, right? Like, he's just like, that's just a fairy tale they used to frighten us. And remember, like, the way that I understood it, it's the dad who actually sent that video.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he knows exactly who this guy is. They wouldn't know his name, or anything. If they just saw him, they was like, who the hell is this?
Right. Anyway, moving ahead, we get introduced to the best character, because after the Rhino gets that footage, he's like, call the foreigner, get him on this, and then we get. I think this is the part where everyone in my theater perked up, because this is the part where like people like start talking amongst you, like, oh my god, what's going on? And like they're like gasping a little bit. We get the foreigner, played by Chris Abbott, okay, who is an up and coming actor. He's been in a lot of great stuff. He was in Possessor. He was Yosarian in Catch 22, the new miniseries. He's a great actor, Chris Abbott.
He left Girls.
Yeah, he was on Girls. And like. This is the first time I had no idea he was in this movie. Watching it in the theater was the first time that I'd even known he was in this movie, and like he's not anywhere in the promotion, and it's great because it really does shock you and surprise you when he shows up, and he is cool as hell. Okay, like he's so cool. Like you see him like wearing like all white snowsuit with like big ski goggles on, and the guard is like coming at him, and he's like takes him off, and then he's. Everyone's always like, they're the coolest super speed ever in movie history, like Macari or the Flash or something. No, the Foreigner is the coolest speedster in movie history. Okay, this is so cool. It's so cool. Like I love that undercrank kind of effect where it's like it's shuddering and it's flickering.
It's very old school, right?
Like Smallville did something similar. I love Smallville super speed too. It's very Smallville. It's like it's cheap. But what can we can make it look cool? That's the kind of thing. Like the Foreigner is like that old school. Like we have the rights to all these characters. Pick one at random and see if we can make it look cool. And that's what the Foreigner is. I love them. What do you guys think of it?
I love the character. I really do. I will say I did look at the trailers again, and I think he appears in one of them, just like maybe for like one shot where like I think he says something. But I really also had no idea Christopher Abbott was in this movie. Like I was just like, wait, who the heck is this guy? And I feel that part of the appeal of this character and the way that he is presented is that he is a mystery. He's an enigma. You don't really learn much about him except maybe that Kraven murdered his mentor or something, but it's like that lack of context that gives him a kind of power, and I love the presentation of his powers, like his because you're never really quite clear as to exactly what he's doing. Like, is he hypnotizing people, or is he actually like manipulating, slowing down time? And either way, I think he has a great presence. He really just steals every scene he's in. Right.
It's a lot of charisma. It's a lot of charisma. What do you think, Ro? What do you think of the Foreigner?
I thought the Foreigner was pretty cool. His aura was cool. A little scary, but even the way, like you said, they handled his powers, like I don't know, it takes a lot for me to raise my eyebrow, especially when it comes to like speedster stuff. So again, this is just another example of like you're going the cheap route, but it's working. Like if they went above and beyond with how they typically do with speeds and stuff, I don't know if I would have been too interested. But I like how they handled it. Even the way that he was fighting with Kraven, it was cool, man. Like
Yeah, no.
it's
Yeah,
it's simple. That's the best. It's
exactly.
simple.
You make a great point because, like, let's say like it's had like a $200 million budget, right? It's like, oh, we want this scene to look really cool, and like we got to put a lot of money in the scene, so you get something that's more typical blockbustery super speed, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like he's not as cool as like this guy that's like kind of flickering in and out. It's a cheap effect, but like the way it's presented is very enigmatic. It's got a lot of impact to it. It's a little bit uncanny, a little bit suspenseful. Again, everyone's when he first shows up and he kills that guard, everyone was like I heard a lot of like kind of like talking like, oh my god, like what was that? What was that in my theater? Like that was so great. Like it's just really he really starts to steal the show, and every time he pulls it up, it's like it was like watching X-Men Days of Future Past for the first time.
Yeah.
When Quicksilver, when you see that scene for the first time when he like puts his headphones on,
Mm-hmm.
it's like that. It's like that kind of electricity. Like when he takes his glasses off, like that's what you lock in. Like he does it every time he does it. It's like it's the coolest thing. Like
And
it's the coolest thing.
and again, it goes back to your whole thing about like cheap. Like we're using. I want to be sure that when I use the word cheap, I mean it kind of like in a good way
Yeah,
because it's
no,
like the
frugal.
the actors are doing such a great job of them not having to do so much special effects because like the vibe that they radiate, or just like the aura that they radiate, and just like how good that they're playing their roles, it makes it very easy, at least in this case, for them not to have to do too much. Like, homie just walked in the room, and I was like, "Oh shit, my dick kind of hard," and then he's over there on the other side of the screen. That's cool. That's awesome. Like, so again, the actors who don't do too they do more
As
than
long as they
enough
have like
so that the extra
presence,
is you don't have to do too much for the extra. Yeah.
not like that presence. Like just the actor alone can can pull it off, can make it land. Because like
Yeah.
if as the actor is making you believe that the effect is cool and like they're like carrying it with like swagger,
Hell
then
yeah.
you're going to do it because like the foreigner has lots of swagger when he kills the guards, like the police officers, like in the like the Russian castle that they're fighting in or whatever. Um, that was also really cool. Like he just pops in, he just pops out, he just fucking just stabs them both with the
It
with
was
the
in Turkey though. I think it was like a Turkish monastery or
yeah,
something.
something like the Turkish monastery. Yeah, it was Turkish monastery. But yeah, no, that was cool. Like as long as if he can sell it, and he does. Chris
Yes.
Rabbit, he can sell it. It makes you actually a bit more interested in watching that horrible looking Wolfman remake that he's going to be in. It's because of him. Because maybe he can sell it. Maybe he can sell it to me. That it's not going to be terrible.
I don't know. The way this conversation is going, man, I feel like we've lost the point. Like we've lost the plot with some of these movies, bro. Because it's
Right.
like this shit is so simple, but it's entertaining. But the
Exactly.
problem is just like, yo, everybody's expecting things to be over the top, and nowadays a lot of the over the top shit is not entertaining, dog.
No,
It's
exactly.
not.
Like there's so much being shoved at you. Okay,
Yeah.
like think of Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos right now, it is annoying to watch. Because it's trying too hard to be too cool. It's trying too hard to be too funny. It's trying too hard to be too wacky. It's trying too hard to be too comic booky. It's trying so much. It's
Mm.
that I watched the first episode. That those episodes are just painful to watch because like there's it's like I feel like I'm suffocating, right? Kraven,
Mm.
it's simple, it's to the point. It's like people are like, oh, but like this is just when they say it's cheap, they mean it in a bad way. Like, oh, this is cheap, low budget. It's disposable trash. You know what? That's what these things are. I'm sorry, they're not
Yeah.
high art, okay? And the fact of the matter is that Sony stuff, even though you're calling it disposable trash in comparison to Marvel and DC stuff, it's it's trying a lot way harder than some of those things do.
But
Okay,
the
what does
thing's
that
like
say to you?
we're we're not where we are with Marvel and DC without these quote unquote disposable or cheap movies. We're not here without them. So it's just like the fact that like we can't like the general public, it seems, can't even enjoy simple movies anymore. Again, that just shows you how much we've lost the plot here. Because for me, I'm gonna be honest with you, like it it is a little painful that a movie like this back in the day, I think it would do better in the box office. But because we've gotten so spoiled, well, the general public has gotten so spoiled with what they gotten spoiled with. It's like, oh, now a movie like this, well, it's done. It's doing poorly. It sucks because this movie's not bad.
It's
This
not
is
bad.
not a bad movie.
Like the thing, like let's put it in perspective, right? Like people love Blade, right? But Blade would not do well in this climate with these people because Blade has all the same hallmarks of things that they hate. One, it's not faithful to the comics. Two, it just uses random character names for random characters. And three, it doesn't really adapt any comics. It just uses this comic story for its own generic plot. You know, but you
Mm-hmm.
know what? It's fun. It's simple. You get it, and the actors sell it. And that's what these kind of things are. So but people just want superficial accuracy, superficial faithfulness, so that they can feel
Fidelity.
like, yeah, exactly. So,
Mm-hmm.
so so that they can feel like, oh man, this was really accurate to this panel or something. Like that means it's a good movie. Even though like the visuals are crappy, the story's undercooked, the acting is bad, and like it doesn't
Or the script was like launched into production unfinished and
exactly.
having
Mm-hmm.
to be like retooled all the time.
Yeah, or like we can't do it now because you have to wait for this movie, for this spin-off, for this Avengers film, that kind of shit. Like no, we need something simple, something that isn't burdened by anything else. And that's what I love about these.
Yeah.
People were clowning on Sony for like, oh my god, Sony admitted there wasn't really a cinematic universe planned, because
They
they were
didn't.
just. But like the thing is right that like they were just said like they weren't like taking it like that, that they weren't like, oh, everything is a piece of the bigger puzzle, which is great.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
great that it's not. That's what I want. I don't want like, oh, this has to be seen before this one and before this one, but after this one. That way you can watch all of the
Oh.
multiverse saga in
Oh.
faithful order. Something like that. We don't need that. Okay, these are individual franchises under a big banner. That's what Sony understands, and that's what Marvel and DC, I'm presuming, is going to lose track of. Okay, because they think of these things as just one franchise. No, they're not. They're an umbrella with multiple franchises, and that's why you get stupid shit like 8 years between Aquaman sequels or Marvel or Captain Marvel sequels. Because they're not thinking like, you know what, we should probably get the sequel to that like out in a year or two. No, not thinking that like, oh, we can wait 8 years
No.
because the sequel to Captain Marvel is actually Captain America 3 and Miss Marvel and Loki. Those are the real sequels. Oh wait, no. What if Season 2 is actually another sequel to that too? Because
Wait,
they think of
was
it
it
all as
really
one
8 now?
franchise. So they think of everything as one link. No, it's not. That's why those movies underperform. Not because they're bad. And Aquaman 2 didn't perform because it was bad. It wasn't that great, but it didn't underperform that severely because they waited too long. Okay, they
Mm-hmm.
wait too long because they don't think of these as multiple franchises, and they should be. I would watch a Kraven 2. I'd watch Morbius 2. I'd watch Madam Web 2 because they're all singular things. Okay, that understand what they would want to do.
I will add though that based on my research, Sony did have a plan. They did have a
Oh yeah,
roadmap. And I would say probably they made some they made some decisions for better or worse a few years back that radically changed their plans, and I think had a kind of a seismic effect on everything that came after No Way Home.
Mm.
I'll put it that way. So I think one of the reasons for even like some of the delays that we've seen, they were really because, okay, now we have to rejigger things and figure out like how are these other movies actually working within this new paradigm. Like, do we actually have we don't have our original end goal anymore. And the universe is different now. The continuity is a little different. So how do these pictures fit in there? And then you add COVID and you add like the strikes on
Mm-hmm.
top of that, and yeah, man, and it becomes like a whole thing in and of itself, and I kind of feel sorry for them. I mean, I think maybe if not for what happened with No Way Home, we might have already gotten like a big crossover movie between these franchises with the Tom Holland incarnation of Spider-Man.
Hmm.
But who knows? Maybe it's for the best, because ultimately, I think it was really after. I think at a certain point they were just like, okay, we need to start stripping out all of the extra universe building from these pictures and make them even more standalone, because we might be changing our minds about it later, or it might not be working anymore, or people are getting tired of it or something. And so maybe that's how we ended up with Kraven being the most standalone movie out of them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, you
and
know,
so to piggyback off of that too, like I would rather a couple years from now we're able to just go back and watch these movies and just say, you know what, as its own thing, whether they get sequels or not, this was a good ABC movie. I would rather a stack of those versus what Elvis just mentioned, like a stack of movies that are they take years to get a sequel just so they have to interconnect to something just because it's part of like a bigger picture. At this point, like it makes the viewer experience painful. I'm sorry, it just makes it painful because at this point it's like reading a convoluted comic book line. Oh, I have to read this comic to get this thing, and then for it to connect to this other thing. Versus, no, I could just pick up this random comic here. I could read it, enjoy a good front to back story, put it down, move on to the next that's doing the same thing. Like, I would rather that in the end.
I'll just add that, personally, I don't mind when there are gaps of a few years, because it used to be that we would have to wait on average like 3 years between sequels in a blockbuster franchise, like back in the 80s and 90s, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like at a certain point it became, oh wait, can we do like one sequel like every year, or every 2 years, or every year and a half, like, or or we'll have like a spin-off movie every other year, so we can keep that going. I just feel like, well, the pace of production can sometimes just be grueling. You need time,
Mm.
maybe you need to sometimes maybe space things out, so okay, there's enough time to actually make a script, there's enough time to shoot the film properly, to make it work in post and everything. So I don't mind sometimes waiting between sequels, but as long as the end result
Mm.
is good, you know.
Yeah, that's valid. Okay.
yeah, no, I totally agree with all of that. And that's why it'd be such a shame if they stop making things like this. I sometimes I just want to. I don't want like a character to appear because you're gonna be important to like the storyline or to the world building. Sometimes I want a character to appear because it'd be fun to see them in the film.
Yeah.
And that's why I hate about like all this other stuff, because like it's fun. I think it's really fun how and what characters this movie uses. So you have Kraven the Hunter, right? And you're not gonna have him hunt animals, but you know what's really cool? What if you put like a couple of the animal themed Spider-Man villains into the film, into the movie? Yeah, you have the Rhino, the Chameleon. That's fun stuff. You make mention of the Jackal. So in the
Mm-hmm.
movie, like that's fun. So that's not you're not doing that primarily, or only I should say, because like, oh man, we got introduced because they're gonna be important in like this part of the saga. It's because you're making a movie about Craven. Put some animal characters in there. Fun, fun
Yeah.
stuff. It's
it, it
simple.
it makes sense in the context that they create, and it works.
Yeah. So moving ahead, we get to the part where Chameleon gets kidnapped by the Rhino's henchmen, and it's my favorite sequence in the movie. I mentioned this earlier. I'm not sure if you were here, Aro, where like he's running through the streets, he's climbing on walls, he's jumping across cars. It's fantastic. It is great stuff. It's like that scene where in Man Web where Ezekiel is jumping across city lanes and shit, chasing after Madam Web and the girls in New York. It's like that kind of stuff. I love it. It's kinetic. It's fun. Some of the CGI in some parts are dodgy, but I think Aaron Aaron Taylor Johnson and the Suns team and everything, they do a fantastic job making that scene look fantastic. And at the end, when like he's pulling the helicopter, reeling it in with his arms and stuff like that, it's like what if Winter Soldier was good, like that part where he's chasing after Bucky and everything, in the Winter Soldier. Everyone's like, "Oh, look at that scene where Captain America's holding like the helicopter down to the ground." Like, except that's lame. What if it was good? That's what Kraven has. I love that
Yeah,
scene. It's my favorite part of the movie.
yeah.
Chris Kraven.
I like it too. Because like I think we were talking about like earlier about how there was like this like mysticism about like who Craven is and why everybody was like they tried to make the whole thing was like, oh, it's Craven. I was like, I don't know if we need to be shocked about that. This guy has no problem just like jumping out of buildings and like crashing on the street to try to chase a car. It's like he's making it very known. Yeah, I'm Craven. This is me. This is what I do. Like so, hey, more power to you. So I found that little part funnier now that we're talking about that certain scene, but I mean, I liked it. It was fun. It was fun. That's how like you really know. Like that's when they really showed you like, okay, yeah, this is Craven. These are his abilities. He can climb up and down walls and do X, Y. Yeah, I'm here for it.
I mean, I don't have much to add. I mean, yeah, like I really enjoyed that sequence. I personally, though, think that the actual, like, the sequences that follow after, where, you get to see Chameleon and Rhino interact, and there's a whole arc there, I think that stuff to me is even better.
Oh no, it's great. I think that a lot of the stuff with Chameleon, like we don't get to see him do a lot of Chameleon stuff in the film, but the way they build it up, the way they kind of segment it is really good. Like it shows like his insecurities, and like he's basically using initially his like mimicking skills as a defense mechanism because he's so insecure about like who he is and what he's doing, and then it kind of builds gradually where like he's being forced into more situations that he's not comfortable with. So he's almost like he's attached. Like he's at the end when Kraven's defeated Rhino, he's like gonna shoot him. Like that's like he's trying to embrace a kind of strength that he knows he doesn't have. So I love that stuff as well. And I think you're on point by saying that's a really strong part of the film. This film, I think the character work is actually some of the best character work in any one
Yeah,
of these movies. So it's again the fact that it's the lowest rated one is insulting. Okay, I'm sorry. It's insulting that this is the lowest rated one. Because it actually is putting a lot of work in the script. The script is fine. It's probably the strongest script
yeah,
in any
No,
movie of
no,
these
wait a
movies.
minute, wait a minute. Okay, look, I will say this: the script has clear setups and payoffs. I mean, I really like how they have that stuff worked out. I mean, you see these little things sometimes, like the foreigner will count like 1, 2, 3, and they repeat that thing several times until finally, you get that, you get that moment where he's actually like shot through the eye. I mean, that stuff is really good. That's actual, meat and potatoes, classic ABC storytelling. And I feel it's these things that make a script work, but they can easily go missing, in the, modern blockbuster production.
Mm.
I don't know, what do you call it, like with all the
Assembly
hectic,
line.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, with the assembly, like just the way these movies are made now, you can easily lose that stuff.
mhm,
So I just really appreciated how, okay, yeah, they have these little bits, these little payoffs, to just plot setups or character setups, like, like even just that little bit where in that final scene between the brothers, and I think that relationship is really the core of this movie. Like when Chameleon has basically embraced his own sort of animal uh, personality or whatever, and he's like, he does the same thing with the ear, where he says "Bye, Craven" or something, and like he, like,
Flicks him.
yeah, flicks him, right? I'm like, yeah, that feels so completely true, right, to what this movie was doing earlier, you know so I
mhm.
would say, I think this is the script work here just, speaks for itself. It is like maybe the best script, that they've,
Yeah.
out of all the 6 films that exist in this, in this branch of the SSU. you know
Yeah. I 100% agreed. Um, And I love, again, we got a little touch with the Rhino, and I love it. Where like he like after Kraven goes to the Turkish monastery to try to rescue his brother, and it's a trap, right? And then they're like, the guy with the missile calls it in, like, yeah, we got it, and stuff like that. And then they try, and then Rhino is like, okay, well, did the other guys check in? And the other guy's like, no, the other guy didn't check in. And he's like, oh, Kraven's still alive then. Like, he knows it. He's smart. He's a smart guy. Okay. He realizes, okay, well, one of the guys said that Kraven is dead, and the other guy, we can't even get on the phone anymore. Then he's dead. He's dead as hell. So, Kraven is alive, and stuff like that. I love that. Again, it shows cleverness, shows awareness without being too on the nose.
Mhm.
And I don't know, like, I guess the only thing that really does feel out of place, and this is probably only there just for marketing purposes, because they didn't even set up earlier, was when the foreigner stabs him with like the scarecrow venom, to give him like nightmare visions,
Oh
and
yeah.
there's a bunch of spiders. Like that's literally just there only to be in the trailer, okay? So that people will be like, spiders, like that's the reason it's only there. So that felt out of place a little bit. It's like when they cast Rise Evans as like the hippie guy in Venom 3, because they knew people would be like, whoa, is that the lizard? And that's like the reason why they would cast him. So that felt out of place. But honestly, the third act is pretty straightforward. It's like a big extended fight scene, but it's really fun. Really fun
Yeah.
overall. I loved, again, the animosity and like the attitude and the intimidation factor of the foreigner. When he's like really got Kraven on the ropes, it's like so cool. It's like Bullseye from the Ben Affleck Daryl movie. Colin Farrell playing
Ooh.
Bullseye. I love it. I love it. Because like comic movies used to have like this one henchman that was like just there, it'd be like just there just to be cool for a couple of scenes, like, and that used to be so great. Like, and you even used to have it earlier in MCU. Yeah, he had Frank Grillo as Crossbones for like
Mhm.
Winter Soldier, and I know Frank Grillo's okay, but like your Winter Soldier isn't that great. But you used to have that kind of insight to that kind of thing. We need one cool guy, we need one cool guy, and that's the foreigner to a T. Like, he's just the good henchman. I could see this character. I know he's a Spider-Man character, and that's why Sony has the rights to him, and he technically has a superpower. But I could see this character like poured into a Bond movie as the Bond
Ooh.
henchman, the Bond villain. Like, we got this, especially if you go like the hypnotism thing. Then that's great. That works. It's a great gimmick, and I love it. I love it. And so I think it's also great that Kraven doesn't beat him.
No,
He's beaten by someone outside his light and vision, and that's good. I love that shit.
I mean, yeah, like if you think about it, like he actually the foreigner kind of kills him, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
the
Calypso has
poison
to.
works. The
Yeah, it
poison.
does. Yeah, and I mean, I thought that the confrontation was just. I thought the confrontation was great. Like it was probably the most visually, ambitious sequence, or at least from a filmmaking standpoint, right? Like it was kind of surreal, and he's like being hit like with all these visions of his mom. So and to me it was like, okay, spiders, okay, is one thing, right? But to me it was more interesting that like his greatest fear is to end up like his mom. Like for me, like that was where, okay, that's like where it hits emotionally. It brings things back to his mother and the fact that she was taken from him and she died alone, right? Like with her horrors, presumably. We don't even really have any definitive proof of that, right? But yeah, like I thought that confrontation was just great from an aesthetic standpoint, and also from an emotional standpoint, and of course, like it has that almost like that. It has that payoff to him doing the counting, right? Like, and then ultimately he gets taken out by Calypso, right? And Calypso has to resurrect Kraven again. So basically, yeah. So you could say, well, the foreigner won, but the good guys cheated.
No, you're on the money, 100%. Okay, and again, um, so it does show like the give and pull, like Chameleon has a point at the end, or like, where he says basically calls out Kraven like, you're not leading a good lifestyle either, and he's not. Like
Yep.
he put himself into this mortal risk, and he basically got himself killed, you know, and he's still gonna do it, but like he can't live above the fact that he's not living like a moral life. Really, he's still a murderer, and he's not living one that is a noble one either, because or at least one that is sane and like smart, because he did get himself killed. He got himself murdered.
Yeah.
So it's great. I do love how that kind of dovetails, like where he didn't really win, and he barely beat the Rhino, and I love that it leads to his brother kind of calling him out on it. Like, this was dumb, and you can't. I'm not going to judge you, but you can't judge me.
Yeah, and even old girl, she made a mention to that too, because I think she said something along the lines of he was pretty much being cocky. He was like, I'm fast, I'm a hunter, nobody can beat me. But she was just like, you may be fast, but you can't outrun karma. He's like, well, I can outrun karma too. Come to find out, buddy, you can't. You really can't outrun karma.
Yeah,
So,
you would have gone to hell,
mhm.
I think what I really like about that, his final, not confrontation, but his final scenes with his brother is that they really try to bring in here this idea that I think they kind of are trying to bring in this idea that ultimately, on some level, Kraven really is still the hunter. Like, he may not hunt animals, but he does hunt game. And on some level, like, his brother is kind of telling him, you're a hypocrite, because our dad, he would hunt people to prove how powerful he was.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what you're doing.
Exactly. That's exactly what Ro is saying as well. Like, he's cocky, so he's doing it not because it's a moral thing to do, but because it's pride. Okay, because he mentions as well, like in the beginning, like the land he's on was left him by his mother, right? All right, like that's like legally his land, like he owns it, and he basically like when he kills the poachers that poach on that land, like we see it twice in the movie. It's a point of pride, like you hunted on my land. He even mentions it, like this is private property when he's an adult and he kills those guys in the vans. Like, this is private property. This is property. So like, he's not doing it specifically because he's doing it for like noble moral reasons, because like his ego.
Yeah, he wants to prove that he's like the alpha predator. He's like the dominant, he's like the dominant hunter, predator in this territory. It's a whole, it's again like this thing about power and showing like, and proving like, to show that you're like the top dog essentially. And in a way, like, arguably his justification that he's like, he's like trying to, he's trying to, I don't know, like undo his father's wrongs or whatever. I don't remember the exact dialogue, but it's almost like, it's just a justification for that. But his brother can see what he's really doing.
Yep.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Agreed.
And in fact, I do want to kind of like maybe bring it a little full circle as well, because we're near the end where let's see, where he killed his father basically, right? And he takes his father's bullets from him, at the last second, just to make sure he's unarmed. And like at the very beginning, in the beginning flashback, when it's teen Kraven, he he mentioned that, like, it's not, it wouldn't be good to have like, he doesn't think it's fair to use weapons, okay? Because if you're killing an animal, you should kill it like on your own terms, if an animal doesn't have weapons, you shouldn't have any weapons either. So it's like a point of pride, really, as well, that he takes the bullets away from his father's gun, specifically just, as like, his father would meet the bear on its own terms, unarmed, okay? And I feel like that, and he thinks he's probably special. He doesn't use weapons per se.
He doesn't use firearms.
He uses firearms, but he still uses blunt weapons. So he is still, I think he's a hypocrite. You're right. He's definitely a hypocrite.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's stuff I love there. And I
That
do love
scene was raw, Michael. That scene was raw.
where he kills his dad.
Yo, raw.
It's so good. It's so good. I do, like, Russell Crowe plays such a great douche in this movie. that it is satisfying, but also again, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where like if this was shot by like the art, like the in-house style of like Marvel or something, it'd be a lot less interesting because you wouldn't get the like the setting or like the look of the woods. It's like very foggy, early morning. The like the dour gray colors of it are like very intentional and very nuanced colors here, very rich in
Mhm.
how like hazy it is. It's early morning fog. It's a great atmosphere, really. And then you look at the shot where like he pulls out the bullets and let them fall out of his hands. Like that's great stuff. That's great
Yes.
visual language. It's so fucking good. But
It's,
it'd be so much more standard looking in like the house style. So like I love that stuff here.
and again, it was so gangster too.
Exactly. It was. It felt like very Godfather. Like we got kill the old boss.
Yes.
Yeah, I also think that this probably would not fly in the standard Marvel house style. I will say that I've noticed they really take great care to make sure that their heroes do not commit murder. Like there's usually some way that, they kind of find ways of getting out of it. Like, Tony Stark isn't going to kill Aldrich Killian. It's like Pepper Potts who kind of does that. Or I
Mhm.
remember watching Shang-Chi, and to me, it just seemed blatantly obvious that every time he's about to kill somebody like pulls the knife out of his hand. You know what I'm saying? So,
Yeah.
so there's this weird tendency where they know the villain has to die, but they don't want the hero to do it. And here it's kind of like, well, I think it may not be underlined, but I think it's pretty evident that A, Kraven kind of summoned that bear. He can
Right.
control animals, and B, he took his father's bullets away, so he left him defenseless.
Mhm.
And I mean, okay, so he doesn't quite do it with his own hands, but basically, yeah, like I mean, this is not the kind of thing that I think they would have allowed in a in a Marvel Disney movie.
Oh no. Yeah, definitely. Um yeah, no. They are yeah, no, they don't like to get their hands dirty, which I think no matter what people say, like these weren't really villain movies. Well, at the very least, they're a little shade darker than you get with Marvel.
Yeah.
Okay,
Absolutely.
and like, and then the last scene is fantastic because again, we've mentioned it again a couple of times now. Chameleon like really dressing down Craven at the end, and he's getting like fealty from some henchman, and Craven picks that up. Like it's great because I love that. I love my favorite cliche, and it's a newer thing. I love when like you go from like the old generation, which is all very traditional and very kind of like very kind of stoic, and then you get the new generation, which are like kind of like nebbishy, kind of nerdy kind of characters that are a little more over enthusiastic, a little more energetic, and so that you get like the Chameleon, who's like he's a very stylish guy. He's a lounge singer. He owns this nightclub. He's a fashionable kind of guy, uh, and now he's the mafia boss here. And I love that.
Mhm.
Love that kind of contrast where like he's like the guy you wouldn't expect. You know, and so I love that stuff. And again, we mentioned before the back and forth between him and Craven is perfectly sums up the themes of the movie. Like like if you're gonna live in like this kind of animalistic way, then you've basically given up on your humanity in some level.
Yep.
And they like you don't get to judge me. You're not living nobly or sensibly or morally yourself.
Yeah,
Look,
you're not above all of this stuff that you pretend to be above.
yeah, look at yourself in the mirror. That's why he makes himself look like Craven. Like look at yourself. Look at who you
And
are.
he does actually. He literally looks at himself in the mirror in the lion vest in the last shot.
Mhm.
Yeah. And
Exactly.
I was gonna say this too, like given all the context of this movie, again, I know we kind of had the conversation about like in universe stuff, if this was to be branched out, like I think maybe with again, if this is just being hypothetical, if we were to get maybe one more movie with Craven, or maybe like a mini series where you know he's really challenged more about his morals and the things that he sort of kind of believes, and then we really see him come to terms with who he is deep down inside. I could perfectly see this Craven being thrown into either the Tony was it the Tobey Maguire movies or Andrew Garfield or even Tom Holland. Like, just flesh this out a little bit more. He can fit right in.
No, 100%. And I feel like you're right. Like, we're looking inside the mirror, right? He got the lion vest on. This lion that he respected, he's now
Mhm.
wearing like as a trophy. He might be doing it out of respect still, but he's still wearing it as like a pelt, as like a
Mhm.
trophy. Like his father, basically doing what his father said. Like this is you. So he's basically like already given an inch to like his father's legacy. You
Mhm.
know, so like maybe if you now like the mafia stuff, maybe like if there was a Creeping 2, be like the
Yeah.
Godfather Part 2, where like Michael loses just even a little bit more of his sense. Maybe maybe like he kills Chameleon, and if there was a second one,
Mm.
like that removes his last bond to who he is as like a person, and he's
Put us in the writer's
you put us
room,
in
dog.
we can do it. We
Damn.
can do it. Okay.
I personally have this idea that a Kraven sequel opens with a flashback, showing Chameleon meeting Miles Warren. And like, so it introduces the jackal, it introduces the serum, and like you actually get to see his, kind of like maybe a body horror like transformation and all that stuff. Like, I would love to me that would just be the perfect opening scene, right? Because they jump a year later, right? Like after
Mhm.
some stuff has happened off screen, and I'm just like, okay, then the first scene of the sequel should be we see exactly what happened between these two when he went to New York, and there's like maybe like a whole I don't know, like 8-9 minute sequence there or something. um yeah, and yeah, like I think like that, and that would be the setup for, okay, so Chameleon and Jackal are the big villains this time. Like, and maybe the Jackal is the one who challenges Kraven physically, whereas Chameleon is like, yeah, he's going to be like a master manipulator kind of
Yeah, like
character.
working the angles there.
Mm.
Yeah, that's great because I feel like there are so many like animal themed Spider-Man villains that you could keep that going for a solid 3 films. You
Mhm.
know, like you could, and without messing things up too much. Um, but no, I really enjoyed that. And again, I feel like discussing a bit more the themes they played with. I think that talking it through um, kind of made them seem more evident than they did while I was in the theater. And so now I think they might have notched it up a point for me, just talking about like how things fit visually,
Mhm.
thematically, character wise.
Nice.
I think I kind of left leaving this conversation, really, really appreciating and respecting this film a lot more than I did
Hell
before.
yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. So at the very end, he puts on the pelt. He's like looking in the mirror, and he got the note saying his father, like from his father, going like, this is you. This is you. This is who you are. You're the legend. You know. Um, and like, it's a bit of a dour note, really. Like it's like what will he do next? And people are
uh
like,
we might have seen that if they had kept those post-credit scenes in.
you're right, yeah, because as we mentioned, let's talk about the post-credit scene here. That because in the trailer you see like he's in the jungle with like a torch and he has the vest on and he's
I
looking at
didn't see the
something.
post credit, so yeah, you guys got to tell me what happened.
But there's no post-credit scene. Which in the trailer you see him in what was probably the post-credit scene. Okay,
Mm.
where he's got the vest on, he's in the jungle, he has a torch, looking at something in like a cave or something,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like
In the first scene, he actually has a bow and arrow. He literally seems to be going through the jungle or something and hunting. And then they cut to, and then at another point, yeah, that's where he has the torch and he lights up a cave. And yeah, and so neither of those moments were in the final cut. But the fact that he's wearing the lion vest would place it chronologically after the ending.
yeah,
Yeah.
no. So we were thinking that maybe it was connected to the animal totem stuff, because that's probably what they wanted before they settled on Null, and maybe he was in a cave that gave more mythology, more lore to things, like maybe like a cave drawing of Spider-Man, something silly like that.
Mm.
Um, so I really hope that someday we get to see that footage. We probably won't because you know Sony is notoriously stingy with the incomplete footage or deleted footage from these films. I'm surprised they they released more than one deleted scene from The Last Dance. Um, because I think they only released one deleted scene from the first Venom, and like only one deleted scene. Well, two, but one isn't really deleted; it's just extended from Let There Be Carnage. Um, so I'm surprised they dropped two deleted scenes from The Last Dance. So, but I bet you we're never going to see what was really on the
Sounds
cut
like
of it.
another leak needs to happen.
It
My
does.
fault. My fault.
100%. But yeah, no. Again, I really enjoyed this. If this is the last of like this branch, I think it went on a good note. The Last Dance, I really loved, and Kraven, I really appreciate. I really do respect it as a film, and you know, I if we had to like balance it out, multiverse saga versus let's see here, the Venom saga stuff, then 100% I'm going with with the Sonyverse stuff. Like I'll rewatch Mobius right now. I'll rewatch Man and Web right now. If you want, you told me like, hey, do you want to watch Ant-Man 3? Hell no. You want to watch the Marvels? Maybe, but let me finish watching Madam Web first. And what else even came out? Thor: Love and Thunder? No. God, what else even came out?
Guardians Volume 3.
Nah, I mean it's all right, but I'll watch two. I'll watch two again.
I mean, yeah, it's been a little bit like, they've been hard to keep track of, honestly, like lately. I think they used to be easy enough to keep track of through phase 3, and then I think it just sort of starts to get a little blurry from there on in.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, but yeah, I remember just not being all that impressed anymore. I think the Marvels, especially, I was just like, okay, I guess I like some of the Disney stuff, but as a whole, it was just like not very. I will say, I actually thought like Ant-Man 3 wasn't, like as bad as people said it was. Like I kind of enjoyed it a
No,
bit more.
I feel like it's not as bad as people think it is. I kind of enjoyed a lot Ant-Man 3, but and I think that people don't like it. They don't like it for the wrong reasons. Okay, like they'll be like,
mm,
"Oh, it ruined Kang," but one, um, Kang should have never shown up. Okay, I think introducing Kang at all in anything was a dumb idea because, with Thanos, right? And the reason why he worked is because he was always on the fringe. He was
yeah.
never the focus of anything. People were like, oh, they should have. They made him look stupid. They should never show him at all. Okay, him looking stupid is not even like the reason why that was why that was a bad idea. The bad idea was they should have kept him on the fringe. That way, when you actually want to introduce him, have him show him doing stuff, you have the movie where he can do stuff. Because obviously, he's not able to do stuff in the stuff before the movie he's meant to be a part of. You
Mm,
know, you just make him look. Every time you introduce him beforehand, you're gonna make him look dumb because he can't do anything until that movie,
yeah.
or at least anything truly significant.
or substantial. Yeah.
Yeah, so no, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think the Disney Plus shows have been more memorable than the movies themselves lately. I mean, I've seen the Agatha series, and I thought that was actually pretty well done.
Yeah, it's all
Uh,
right.
I mean, like I would say as a whole, I was like, okay, this is nice, and I think some episodes were pretty good. Yeah, but
Yeah.
otherwise, yeah, I think I would prefer to. I think I would. I think I like the Sony movies kind of as their own, little thing. It's. I would be open to rewatching them and revisiting them in a way that I don't think. I. I mean, I would probably want to revisit phases 1 through 3 of
Mhm.
the MCU, but maybe not in their entirety. Like to me, the phase 1 is probably the most important one, right? Because it's all building to the Avengers. And but otherwise, like, yeah, like I think the Sony movies are vastly underrated, and I'm hoping that over the years that people will discover them, they will reappreciate them, they will reevaluate them, and then maybe like in 10 years or something, there will be like a whole bunch of folks saying, "Yeah, man, what the hell? Like, why do we hate these movies so much? They turned out to be way better, than a lot of this other stuff that came along."
Yeah. I also agree too. Like I'll say this: I've enjoyed some Phase Four stuff. Like I liked Marvels, I liked Guardians, I even liked No Way Home, and I think that's about it. But yeah, it's only like a handful of stuff. It's not. It's literally nothing too spectacular. But I'm also on the same boat here. It's just like I would rather watch, everything leading up to Infinity War. Like I do that every couple years, and I find myself enjoying that journey because for me, I felt like that next to the first couple years of the Arrowverse, like I think those are like very neck and neck in terms of quality. But it, everything else after that, I'm like, eh. But this stuff right here, the Sony stuff, again, like I mentioned before, compared to what's happening now in Phase Four, I can literally just like if I'm bored or if I just want to watch something and just have fun for 2 hours, I could throw any of these movies on. I don't have to worry about any continuity, what came before, what came after. Have a good time, smile, grin, and then go about my day. And like I said before, we've lost the plot with that. So the fact that Sony just decided, hey, balls to the walls, let's just have fun. I'm here for that because we need fun in these movies. We've lost fun.
We need something that understands it's brief.
Yeah.
It's disposable. Disposable isn't bad.
Yes.
Like and not every issue of a comic book is meant to be like high art. Not every series is Watchmen. Not every series is from hell. Sometimes
Mhm.
you're reading something because it's a fun little thing that you want to spend time with.
Yeah.
So that's what these are. And so even if this is the last one, then great high note. We'll see whenever or if Beyond the Spider Verse ever gets released, and we'll have their final hurrah for this era of the Sony stuff.
It'll come out. It's just one of those things where, I mean, it's animation, it's Phil and Lord, heavy, improv stuff. Probably the script keeps getting rewritten all the time. And obviously with all the strikes and whatever. I mean, yeah, like they're getting there, but it's like a piecemeal process.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm hoping that, like, okay, yeah, they'll get that out of their system, then they'll use that to build up all these other spin-offs they want to do. Gwen Stacy was announced, Spider Noir with Nick Cage live action apparently is happening. So so in that sense, I think they're going to use the Spider Verse as their new sort of central branch, to kind of like build up spin-offs and whatnot. So maybe they'll bring these characters into that at some point,
Yeah.
because I really don't think that it is in Sony's interest to have actually done these movies and then not. It's like leaving an asset to be depreciated. It's kind of like, well, we've established these characters, maybe we can do something. I mean, that's what they basically did with the Sam Raimi and Mark Webb universes for Spider-Man. No Way Home became kind of an excuse to revive those
Mhm.
dormant worlds, right? And they brought back like many of those characters, right? So I could conceivably they could do something like this with the Venomverse characters further down the line.
Yeah. And to also piggyback off of that too, like I've one thing that I like about No Way Home is that I think before that, like the Tobey Maguire movies and the Andrew Garfield movies to an extent, they kind of got memed back into life. Like it was like, oh, these are these movies that we shitted on, but over time, it's like, wait, we found some things to appreciate about it. Almost to the point where I kind of want to say that Marvel started paying attention to that. And who knows how long No Way Home was in production. But I would like to think, that resurgence can happen for these movies as well. Because again, like, for the longest time, Spider-Man 3 was the ugly stepchild. This was the movie that everybody clowned on. And all of a sudden, in 2022, 2021, all of a sudden, like, oh, hold on, this movie wasn't so bad. Were we too harsh? Then all of a sudden now everybody's excited again for Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield to come back. So I would like to think something similar can happen to this in a couple of years because I would like to see a Madam Web continuation. I would like to see a Kraven continuation. I'm pretty sure they're going to continue Venom because it's very successful. But yeah, man, like salute to Tony. I was about to say Tony. Salute to Sony, for again just taking something and not hopefully letting it become a depreciating asset. Like keep milking it for what it's worth, bro. Like we gonna watch them. Like we watching them.
Yeah, no, exactly. And like these aren't high budget. They're very conservatively budgeted, pragmatic, prudent budgets, which has been their strong point, really. And so it's really ridiculous when people are like, "Oh, Craven flopped. Sony on the verge of selling it to Marvel."
Please
One,
don't.
one,
That
yeah,
is ridiculous.
hopefully not, but it is ridiculous because one, they did not gonna lose that much money off of this, and two, anything that they did lose would be made a billion times fold with the next Spider-Man movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Yep.
why would they sell the golden cow? Like, let's say a Disney was like, we're gonna pay you a flat $800 million for Spider-Man rights, or $1 billion Spider-Man rights. 2 or 3 Spider movies, you know, they'll get that same amount, and they'll still have the rights to Spider-Man.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
No, that
ridiculous.
yeah, they would not. The only way I can conceivably see um, Marvel and Disney getting the Spider-Man rights is if is they would have to buy Sony or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I mean, hopefully that doesn't happen because otherwise it's like no, they have a monopoly on like on film culture. It's just antitrust laws violated left and right. You know.
No,
Um,
100%. But I think that, and unless anyone else wants to say or bring anything to the table, I think we run the gamut right now.
can I add one
But
last thing that
no
I
problem.
love about Craven? Okay,
No, no.
so here's the thing. I love the Craven. I'm not sure if it's his theme song, but there is a recurring musical theme throughout Craven. It's like this haunting melody. You hear a
Right.
woman
Yes.
singing. Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys why this is very special to me because that is the Russian lullaby.
What?
No, I'm serious. That song where you hear a woman singing, it's like this haunting theme. It's actually a remix of the Russian
Oh.
lullaby. It's the song, this song, like this sort of fairy tale song that babies, everywhere, are hearing, from their mothers in Russia when a child is like crying and you want them to sleep, you sing them this song, and it's all about like the story of how you have to be like it's trying to like you have to like you have to be quiet, don't lie on the side of the don't lie on the edge of the bed, otherwise the big bad wolf will come and bite you or something like that. It's bad translation, but
Hmm.
yeah, but I was like so shocked that they would take so basically for me that's a sign. Oh, okay, that's again something that his mother would have sung to him. That is like a thing that he remembers. So so the fact that they made it his music theme to me is just like I'm like
Hmm.
as a person of Russian descent, I'm like yeah, chef's kiss. You know.
Oh no, 100%. And that makes complete sense to me now. Um, so I'll back on to this movie, man. It's the lowest rated one. It's the lowest rated one.
people
Madness.
people were taking out their frustration. They hated the Sony verse. They hate. They were just like they were just waiting for it to come out too, so they could sling mud. I'm. I even like I even read one review. Oh yeah, this is definitely the best, but that's like of all the Sony movies, but that's like a low bar, so it's still bad.
One day we're gonna have a conversation about like social media brain rot in these movies, man. One day, tonight's gonna not. It's not gonna happen tonight, but one day it's gonna happen, man. Because what the fuck?
Yeah.
What the fuck,
Anyway,
man?
yeah, no, I think this is a good, solid endpoint. And hopefully we
I have
do
one
get.
more thing I want
Go
to
ahead, yeah,
say.
go ahead, go ahead.
Put us in the writers' room,
Put us
man.
in the writers' room.
Put us in the writers' room, bro. Like, come on, we could make some fun shit happen, man. Don't give up on these movies, please. Please don't. That's all I gotta say. Don't give up on these movies, man.
Don't no. I know someone was like they really need to follow like the example that the DCU is setting or something like that. And like no, they don't. You know why? Because
Mm-mm.
these movies have their own charm. people do like them, even if you don't. Okay, they do have fans, and it would be really lame if they kind of lost sight of what they were in order to appease people who aren't fans of these things.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I like you're just going after an audience that didn't give you the time of day before. You know.
Yeah, which is kind of what's happening with the DCU right now, I think.
And, like it's like people have this idea that only they are the proper fans of something. It's throughout all kind of fandoms right now. Like only they are the proper fans of a product or a property. So if someone else likes what they don't like, then they're not they can be disregarded, and they don't matter. And that's really disappointing. Because one, I would not want to see something I'm a fan of have to reconfigure just to make someone else happy that didn't
Yes.
even like to begin with.
Agreed.
All right. So
For sure.
here's to the Sonyverse. May long it rain. Long may it rain. Yes. Okay. So let's see here. Let them know where they can find you.
Okay. You can find me on Twitter at MLS532. And I'm also, I have a newsletter on Substack called Textual Variations. So www.textualvariations.substack.com. And yeah, I'm going to be hopefully publishing some really cool articles on the Sonyverse, and throughout this and maybe next month. We'll see how it turns out. Maybe you'll learn some interesting things about what happened to Morbius and what's up with those post-credit scenes and stuff like that.
And Euro?
Sweet. You guys can find me on Roliver Queen _ on Twitter. Nothing much happening there these days, honestly. But the real meat of potatoes is the YouTube channel, Roliver Queen Reviews. So yeah, just dropped the Green Arrow video. I'm also gonna be dropping some more Ultimate Universe stuff. We are having a 600 to 900 sub celebration. That's also gonna be Blackwing, a friend of the channel, a friend of Elvis's as well. We're going to be doing a joint celebration as well, so that's going to be happening in January. So please be on the lookout for that. But other than that, I'm just here plugging along. Thank you for all the support. I'm on my way to 1,000 finally.
Yes. Anyway, yeah, and you can find me on Twitter as well at THE_SNICKMAN. And I love doing these, and hopefully for the next big release we can do one again. And I'm also gonna plan on doing monthly streams in the future for New Gods. I know there's a new Gods comic coming out, I think this week.
Yep.
I am not looking forward to it. I think it's going to be really bad, but I'm excited to talk about it. I love the New Gods, so gotta put my money where my mouth is. See what's going on. All right, so thank you so much for listening, and hope you have a great time. See you again next time.
Sweet.
Yeah.